Trapped in a storm-ravaged manor, a brutal murder shocks Ashford Manor when Sir Reginald is found stabbed in his locked study. As Hercule Poirot unravels a web of secrets, Clara's desperate confession, a hidden passage, a burned letter, and a mysterious lipstick smudge, everyone's a suspect. From family betrayals to corporate conspiracies, each clue pulls Poirot deeper into a deadly game where truth is the only escape. Who killed Sir Reginald and what are they hiding? Chapter 1. The Invitation to Ashford Manor. The autumn wind howled across the English countryside, carrying with it the sharp bite of an early frost, as the sleek black Rolls-Royce wound its way along the narrow lanes toward Ashford Manor. Inside, the car, Hercule Poirot adjusted his perfectly knotted tie, his gloved fingers brushing against the lapels of his immaculate wool coat. Beside him, Captain Arthur Hastings, ever the loyal companion, peered out the window, his breath fogging the glass as he took in the rolling hills, now dappled with the golden hues of October. "I say, Poirot," Hastings remarked, his voice tinged with curiosity. "It's rather odd, don't you think? Sir Reginald Ashford inviting us to this grand affair out of the blue. I mean, we've never met the man. What's he want with a detective like you at a weekend gala?" Poirot's mustache twitched, a subtle sign of amusement. "Mon cher Hastings, you assume always the invitation is without purpose. But the mind of Hercule Poirot, it does not accept such simplicity. Sir Reginald, he is a man of wealth, of power, of influence. Such men do not invite strangers to their homes without reason. Perhaps he fears something, or perhaps he wishes to display something. We shall see." Hastings chuckled, shaking his head. "You and your suspicions, Poirot. Maybe he just wants to show off his manor. I hear Ashford Manor is quite the spectacle. Built in the 17th century, sprawling grounds, secret passages, the lot. They say it's haunted too." "Haunted?" Poirot's green eyes gleamed with skepticism. "The ghosts. They do not interest Poirot. It is the living who make the mysteries, Hastings. The living and their secrets." The car slowed as it approached a pair of towering iron gates, their intricate filigree half covered in creeping ivy. Beyond the gates, Ashford Manor loomed, a magnificent structure of weathered stone and leaded glass, its turrets piercing the overcast sky. The estate was surrounded by dense woods, their branches swaying ominously in the gathering storm. A liveried footman opened the gates and the car crunched along the gravel drive, pulling up before the manor's imposing entrance. As Poirot and Hastings stepped out, they were greeted by a tall, wiry man in a butler's uniform, his face as impassive as the stone walls behind him. "Welcome to Ashford Manor, gentlemen," he said, his voice clipped. "I am Grayson, the butler. Sir Reginald awaits you in the drawing room." Inside, the manor was a labyrinth of opulence. Polished oak paneling lined the halls, reflecting the flickering light of chandeliers. Portraits of stern-faced Ashfords stared down from the walls, their eyes seeming to follow the newcomers. The air carried the faint scent of beeswax and old books, mingling with the distant aroma of roasting pheasant from the kitchens. Grayson led them through a series of corridors, each turn revealing another glimpse of the manor's grandeur. Marble, busts, tapestries, and a grand staircase that spiraled upward like a coiled serpent. The drawing room was a masterpiece of elegance, its walls adorned with crimson damask and gilt-framed paintings. A roaring fire crackled in the massive hearth, casting shadows across the room's occupants. Sir Reginald Ashford stood at the center, a broad-shouldered man in his late 50s, his silver hair slicked back and his eyes sharp as flint. He wore a tailored dinner jacket, and his presence commanded the room like a general on a battlefield. "Monsieur Poirot, Captain Hastings," Sir Reginald boomed, extending a hand. "A pleasure to have you at Ashford Manor. I trust your journey was comfortable." "Most comfortable, Sir Reginald," Poirot replied, his voice smooth as velvet. "Your invitation, it was most intriguing. Hercule Poirot is not often summoned to such splendid gatherings without a purpose." Sir Reginald's smile faltered for a fraction of a second, but he recovered quickly. "Nonsense, Poirot. I simply wished to entertain two men of such renown. Come, let me introduce you to the Others. The room was filled with a curious assortment of guests, each one a distinct thread in the tapestry of the weekend's mystery. First was Clara Ashford, Sir Reginald's niece, a pale young woman in her early 20s with delicate features and wide, anxious eyes. She stood near the window, clutching a glass of sherry, her gaze darting toward the darkening sky. Poirot noted the faint tremble in her hands, as if she carried a burden too heavy for her slight frame. "Clara, my dear," Sir Reginald said, his tone softening. "This is Monsieur Poirot and Captain Hastings." Clara offered a polite smile, but her eyes remained guarded. "A pleasure," she murmured, barely audible over the crackle of the fire. Next was Lord Henry Ashford, Sir Reginald's younger brother, a man whose disheveled appearance and flushed cheeks suggested a fondness for the bottle. His tweed suit was slightly rumpled, and his handshake was overly enthusiastic. "Heard of you, Poirot," he said, grinning. "Cracked some tough cases, eh? Hope you're here for a rest, though. No murders in this house, I assure you." Poirot inclined his head. "One hopes, Lord Henry, that the weekend remains peaceful." Eleanor Ashford, Sir Reginald's wife, was a striking woman with porcelain skin and jet-black hair swept into an elegant chignon. Her emerald gown shimmered in the firelight, but her expression was cold, her lips set in a thin line. She acknowledged Poirot and Hastings with a nod, her eyes flicking briefly to her husband before returning to the glass of champagne in her hand. Dr. James Thornton, the family physician, was a wiry man with spectacles perched on a hawkish nose. His manner was reserved, almost cautious, as he shook Poirot's hand. "I've read of your exploits, Monsieur Poirot," he said. "Your mind must be a fascinating place." "It is the order and method, Doctor," Poirot replied, his eyes twinkling. "The little gray cells, they do their work." Margaret Lyle, Sir Reginald's secretary, was a sharp-eyed woman in her 30s, her auburn hair pulled back in a severe bun. She carried a leather notebook, and her movements were precise, almost mechanical. "Sir Reginald speaks highly of you, monsieur." "Poirot," she said, her voice crisp. "He values intellect above all." Victor Crane, a business rival of Sir Reginald's, was the final guest. A handsome man in his 40s with a charming smile and a tailored suit, he exuded confidence. "Poirot, is it?" he said, his handshake firm. "I hope you're here to enjoy the wine and not to snoop around my business dealings." Poirot smiled enigmatically. "The wine, Monsieur Crane, is always a pleasure, but the mind of Poirot, it is always observant." The group settled into polite conversation, though the undercurrents of tension were palpable. Clara fidgeted with her glass. Lord Henry laughed too loudly at his own jokes, and Eleanor's gaze lingered on Victor Crane for a moment too long. Poirot, ever the observer, catalogued each gesture, each glance, storing them in the orderly compartments of his mind. Dinner was announced, and the guests moved to the dining room, a cavernous space dominated by a long mahogany table set with silver and crystal. The meal was exquisite: roast pheasant, truffled potatoes, and a velvety Bordeaux, but the atmosphere grew heavier with each course. Sir Reginald dominated the conversation, boasting of his latest business ventures, while Lord Henry muttered about debts and Eleanor stared into her wineglass. Clara barely touched her food, her eyes fixed on her uncle with an intensity that Poirot found unsettling. As dessert was served, a delicate lemon soufflé, the storm outside broke, thunder rattling the windows and rain lashing the manors. Stone walls. The lights flickered, casting eerie shadows across the table. Poirot noticed Margaret slip a small notebook into her pocket, and Dr. Thornton's hand trembled as he reached for his coffee. "Quite the tempest," Victor Crane remarked, his tone light but his eyes sharp. "Makes one feel rather trapped, doesn't it?" "Trapped?" Clara's voice was sharp, almost panicked. She stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. I need some air." Before anyone could respond, she fled the room, her footsteps echoing down the hall. "Sir," Reginald frowned. "Clara's been fragile lately," he said, his tone dismissive. "Nerves, you know. She'll be fine." Poirot's mustache twitched again. "The nerves, Sir Reginald. They are often a symptom of something deeper." The conversation resumed, but the mood had shifted. Hastings leaned toward Poirot, whispering, Something's off, old chap. Did you see Clara's face? She looked terrified. Oui, mon ami, Poirot murmured. And not only Clara. There is a shadow in this house, Hastings. A shadow of secrets. As the guests retired to the drawing room for brandy, Poirot lingered. In the dining room, his eyes scanning the table. A faint smudge on Clara's wineglass caught his attention, a trace of lipstick, but not her shade. He filed the observation away, his mind already turning over the possibilities. The evening wore on, the storm growing fiercer. Poirot and Hastings were shown to their rooms, a pair of adjoining suites on the second floor. Hastings, yawning, bid Poirot good night. But the detective remained awake, pacing before the fire in his room. The manor was too quiet, the silence heavy with anticipation. At precisely midnight, a scream shattered the stillness. It was high, piercing, and unmistakably female. Poirot was out of his room in an instant, his dressing gown tied neatly despite the hour. Hastings stumbled after him, bleary-eyed but alert. Poirot, what the devil? To the study, Hastings, Poirot barked, his voice unusually sharp. It came from below. They raced down the grand staircase, joined by other guests roused by the scream. Grayson, the butler, was already at the study door, his face pale. It's locked, he said, rattling the handle. Sir Reginald was working late. He often... Chapter 2. The Shocking Confession. The air in Ashford Manor's study was thick with the metallic tang of blood and the acrid residue of fear. The storm outside battered the windows, each gust a reminder of the manor's isolation, as if the world beyond had ceased to exist. Hercule Poirot stood near the heavy oak desk where Sir Reginald Ashford's body lay slumped, the letter opener protruding from his chest like an accusation frozen in time. The flickering light of a single candelabrum cast long shadows across the room, illuminating the faces of the gathered guests, each one a study in shock, suspicion, or something less easily defined. Clara Ashford stood apart from the others, her slight frame rigid, her pale hands clasped tightly before her. Her earlier confession, I killed him. I stabbed my uncle, hung in the air like a specter, unchallenged yet unconvincing to the keen eyes of Poirot. Captain Hastings, still, reeling from the suddenness of it all, hovered near the doorway, his face a mixture of disbelief and unease. The other guests, Eleanor Ashford, Lord Henry, Dr. Thornton, Margaret Lyle, Victor Crane, and the housekeeper Anna Brooks, formed a loose semicircle, their eyes darting between Clara and the gruesome tableau of Sir Reginald's corpse. Poirot's gaze, sharp and unyielding, fixed on Clara. Mademoiselle Ashford, he said, his voice calm but carrying the weight of authority. You say you have committed this crime, oui? Yet the hands of the murderer, they are not so clean as yours. There is no blood, no mark of struggle. Perhaps you will explain this to Hercule Poirot. Clara's eyes, wide and haunted, met his for a fleeting moment before dropping to the floor. I did it, she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. I was angry. He was cruel. I took the letter opener and... She trailed off, her words dissolving into the silence of the room. Cruel, you say? Poirot pressed, stepping closer, his polished shoes silent on the Persian rug. And this cruelty, it drove you to plunge the blade into the heart of your uncle, in this locked room, with no witness? Tell me, mademoiselle, how did you enter? How did you leave? Clara's lips parted, but no sound came. Her hands trembled, and Anna Brooks, the housekeeper, stepped forward, her face fierce with protective instinct. Leave her be, sir, Anna said, her voice low but firm. She's just a girl, and she's told you what she did. Ain't that enough? Poirot turned his head slightly, his mustache twitching. Enough, Madame Brooks? No, it is not enough. The truth, it is like a fine tapestry. It must be woven with care, with every thread in its place. And this confession, it has threads that do not align. Hastings cleared his throat, his voice cutting through the tension. I say, Poirot, the girls confessed. Surely we can't just ignore that. The police will sort it out when they arrive. The police, mon ami, are delayed by this tempête, Poirot replied, gesturing toward the rattling windows. And, until they arrive, it is the duty of Hercule Poirot to seek the truth. A confession, it is not the end of the mystery, it is the beginning. The room stirred uneasily. Eleanor Ashford, her emerald gown catching the candlelight, stepped forward, her expression as cold as the storm outside. "This is absurd," she said, her voice sharp. "Clara has admitted her guilt. Why torment her further? My husband is dead, and we stand here bickering over details." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Details, Madame Ashford? It is in the details that the truth resides. The locked door, the absence of blood on Mademoiselle Clara's hands, the letter opener that is curiously clean of fingerprints, these are not mere trifles. They are the language of the crime, and Hercule Poirot, he speaks this language fluently." Lord Henry, his face flushed from brandy or nerves, let out a bark of laughter. "You're making a mountain out of a molehill, Poirot. Clara's always been a bit fragile. Probably snapped under Reggie's temper. He could be a beast, you know." "Indeed." Poirot turned to Lord Henry, his tone deceptively mild. "And you, monsieur, you knew this temper well, no? As his brother, perhaps you too felt its sting." Lord Henry's grin faltered, and he reached for his glass, only to find it empty. "Well, I mean, Reggie and I had our differences, but nothing to do with this." Poirot made no reply, his attention returning to the crime scene. The study was a grand room, its walls lined with bookshelves that stretched to the vaulted ceiling. A massive fireplace dominated one wall, its embers glowing faintly, and a single window, its latch broken, let in draughts of cold air. The desk, where Sir Reginald lay, was cluttered with papers, an inkwell, and a half-empty decanter of whiskey. Poirot's eyes lingered on the broken window, then moved to the fireplace, where a faint curl of smoke suggested something had been burned recently. "Grayson," Poirot called to the butler, who stood rigid by the door. "You said Sir Reginald locked himself in this room to work. Was this his custom?" "Yes, sir," Grayson replied, his voice steady but his eyes wary. "Sir Reginald often worked late in the study. He valued his privacy and kept the door locked to avoid interruptions. And yet," Poirot mused, "the door was locked when we entered, and the window, it is broken, but the dust on the sill, it is undisturbed. No one entered from outside, I think." Dr. Thornton, who had been silent, spoke up. "If I may, Monsieur Poirot, the cause of death appears straightforward. The letter opener penetrated the heart, likely causing immediate death. There's no need to complicate matters with speculation about windows or dust." Poirot's smile was polite but sharp. "The cause of death, doctor, is but one piece of the puzzle. The how, the why, these are the questions that occupy Hercule Poirot. And you were Sir Reginald's physician, oui? You knew like d'Albe." Chapter 3. The Locked Study. The storm's relentless fury battered Ashford Manor, its winds howling like a chorus of restless spirits, rattling the ancient windows and plunging the grand estate deeper into an atmosphere of dread. Inside the study, where Sir Reginald Ashford's lifeless body slumped over his desk, the air was heavy with the scent of blood, old leather, and the faint, acrid trace of something burned. Hercule Poirot stood motionless, his small, meticulous frame a stark contrast to the chaos of the crime scene. His green eyes, sharp as a hawk's, darted from the bloodied letter opener to the scattered papers, then to the broken window that let in icy draughts. Captain Arthur Hastings lingered near the doorway, his face pale, his hands fidgeting as he tried to make sense of the scene before them. The other guests, Eleanor Ashford, Lord Henry, Dr. James Thornton, Margaret Lyle, Victor Crane, and Anna Brooks, hovered just outside the study, their whispers a low hum beneath the storm's roar. Clara Ashford, her shocking confession still echoing in their minds, had been escorted to her room by Anna, though Poirot had insisted she remain under watch. The police, stranded beyond the flooded roads, were hours away, leaving Poirot as the sole arbiter of truth in this house of secrets. "Mon ami," Poirot said, his voice cutting through the tension as he addressed Hastings. "Observe the room. It is a stage, and the crime? It is the play. Every detail, the position of the body, the papers, the window, it tells a story. But what story, Hastings? That is the question. Hastings rubbed his chin, frowning. Well, it's a dashed queer setup, Poirot. Clara says she did it, but you're right. Her hands were clean, and this room was locked tight. Grayson had to break the door down. If she didn't come through the door and the window's no good, then how the deuce did she do it? Poirot's mustache twitched, a sign of his mind at work. Exactament, Hastings. The locked room, it is the heart of the mystery. But first let us examine the stage itself. He stepped toward the desk, his movements deliberate, almost reverent. Sir Reginald's body was slumped forward, his head resting on a blotter stained crimson. The letter opener, its silver handle, ornate but now grotesque with blood, protruded from his chest. Poirot leaned closer, careful not to disturb the scene. The wound, he murmured. It is precise. A single thrust, directly to the heart. This was no act of passion, Hastings. It was calculated. Hastings shuddered. Calculated? You mean someone planned this? But Clara said she acted in a rage. Clara says many things, Poirot replied, his tone enigmatic. But the evidence, it speaks louder than words. He turned his attention to the desk, its surface a chaos of papers, pens, and an overturned inkwell. Among the clutter was a decanter of whiskey, half empty, and a single glass with a faint smudge of lipstick on the rim. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Interesting, he said, lifting the glass with a gloved hand. This lipstick, it is not the shade worn by Mademoiselle Clara, nor, I think, by Madame Eleanor. Perhaps another woman was here? Hastings blinked. Another woman? But who? Margaret Lyle? Anna Brooks? Surely not the housekeeper. Poirot did not answer, instead setting the glass down and moving to the fireplace. The embers glowed faintly, but a pile of ash caught his eye. He knelt, using a poker to sift through the remains. Something was burned here, he said, extracting a charred fragment of paper. The fragment bore a few legible words. Deal must not and expose. Poirot slipped the fragment into a small envelope from his pocket. This letter, it may hold the key to Sir Reginald's death. But why burn it? To hide a secret, perhaps? He rose, brushing ash from his gloves, and crossed to the window. The latch was broken, the glass shattered, and cold rain seeped through the gap. Poirot ran a finger along the sill, then held it up, showing a layer of dust. No footprints, no disturbance, he said. The window was broken, but no one entered or left this way. It is a deception, Hastings, meant to mislead. Mislead? Hastings echoed, scratching his head. You mean someone staged this to look like an outside job? Précisément, Poirot said, his voice low. The killer, they wish us to believe the impossible, that Sir Reginald was murdered by a phantom. But Hercule Poirot, he does not believe in phantoms. He returned to the door, examining the lock, which hung splintered from Grayson's efforts. The lock, it was intact before the door was broken, he said. Sir Reginald locked himself in, as was his custom, yet the killer entered, struck and left, leaving the door locked. How? This is the puzzle we must solve. Hastings glanced nervously at the body. Poirot, do you think Clara's lying, or covering for someone? Poirot's eyes gleamed. Clara's confession, it is like a mirror. It reflects something, but not the truth. She protects someone, or perhaps she fears something. We must learn what drives her. He stepped into the hallway where the guests waited, their faces a gallery of unease. Eleanor stood apart, her arms crossed, her eyes fixed on the floor. Lord Henry leaned against the wall, a flask in hand, his earlier bravado replaced by a jittery unease. Dr. Thornton adjusted his spectacles, his fingers trembling slightly. Margaret Lyle, her notebook clutched to her chest, watched Poirot with a calculating gaze. Victor Crane, ever the charmer, offered a tight smile, but his eyes were wary. Anna Brooks had not returned, presumably still with Clara. Monsieur Poirot, Eleanor said, her voice sharp. Must we stand here like gawkers? My husband is dead and Clara has confessed. Surely we can leave this dreadful room? Poirot raised a hand. Patience, madame. The truth. It is not so simple as a confession. I must ask each of you to remain in the drawing room while I continue my inquiries. Grayson, you will ensure no one leaves the manor. Grayson nodded, his face impassive. As you wish, sir. Poirot turned to Hastings. Come, mon ami. We must speak with Mademoiselle Clara. Her story, it is the thread we must unravel. They climbed the grand staircase, the manor's opulent halls now cloaked in an oppressive silence. Clara's room was at the end of a long corridor, its door guarded by Anna, who stood like a sentinel. She's resting, Anna said, her tone defiant. She don't need more questions. Poirot's smile was disarming. Madame Brooks, I seek only to help Mademoiselle Clara. If she is innocent as I suspect, then her truth will set her free. Anna hesitated, then stepped aside. Inside, Clara sat by a small fire, her hands folded in her lap. Her face was pale, but her eyes held a quiet resolve. Monsieur Poirot, she said softly, I've told you what I did. Why won't you believe me? Poirot took a seat opposite her, his posture impeccable. Mademoiselle, I believe you wish me to believe you. But the facts, they do not agree. Your hands, they are clean. The room, it was locked. The letter opener, it bears no trace of your touch. Tell me, why do you confess to a crime you did not commit? Clara's eyes flickered with something. Fear, perhaps, or guilt. I hated him, she said, her voice breaking. He was cruel. He controlled everything, my life, my future. I couldn't bear it. Poirot leaned forward, his voice gentle but probing. And this cruelty? It was enough to drive you. To murder? Or perhaps you protect another. Someone you love, perhaps. Clara's breath caught and she looked away. There's no one else, she said, but the words lacked conviction. Poirot rose, adjusting his cuffs. We will speak again, mademoiselle. The truth it cannot hide forever. As they left the room, Hastings whispered, She's hiding something, Poirot. But what? And why? Patience, Hastings, Poirot replied. The heart of this mystery lies not in what is said, but in what is not. They returned to the study, where Poirot resumed his examination. He sifted through the papers on the desk, finding invoices, contracts, and a ledger detailing Sir Reginald's business dealings. One document caught his eye, a draft agreement, to sell Ashford Industries to a rival firm, with Victor Crane's name scrawled in the margin. Interesting, Poirot murmured. Sir Reginald planned to sell. This would anger many, non? He moved to the bookshelves, running a gloved finger along the spines. One book, a leather-bound volume of Shakespeare, protruded slightly. Poirot pulled it, and with a soft click, a section of the shelf swung open, revealing a narrow passage. Mon Dieu, he said, a rare note of surprise in his voice. A secret passage. Hastings gaped. Good Lord, Poirot, could the killer have used this? Perhaps, Poirot said, peering into the dark corridor. But we must learn where it leads. They followed the passage, its walls damp and cobwebbed, until it emerged in the library behind a tapestry. Poirot noted the dust on the floor, undisturbed except for a single set of footprints, too large for Clara's. The killer, they knew this passage, he said. But Clara, I think, did not. Back in the study, Poirot's mind raced, piecing together the fragments, the locked door, the broken window, the burned letter, the secret passage, the lipstick-smudged glass. Each was a clue, a thread in the tapestry of murder. He turned to Hastings, his eyes alight with purpose. This case, mon ami, it is like a locked room itself. But Hercule Poirot, he has the key, the little gray cells. As the storm raged, unsealing Ashford Manor in its grip, Poirot knew the truth was close, yet maddeningly out of reach. The chapter ends with him standing by the study's fireplace, the charred fragment of the letter in his hand, his mind weaving the threads. of the mystery into a pattern only he could see. Chapter 4. The family secrets. The storm outside Ashford Manor had grown into a tempest, its winds shrieking through the ancient oaks and battering the stone walls with unrelenting force. Inside, the air was no less charged, thick with suspicion, and the unspoken weight of secrets. The study where Sir Reginald Ashford's body still lay had been sealed off at Hercule Poirot's insistence, its door guarded by the stoic butler Grayson, to preserve the crime scene until the police could navigate the flooded roads. In the drawing room, the guests sat in uneasy silence, their faces illuminated by the flickering firelight, each one a potential player in the deadly drama that had unfolded. Hercule Poirot, his small frame impeccably composed, stood near the hearth, his gloved hands clasped behind his back. His green eyes, sharp and unyielding, moved from one guest to another, cataloging every gesture, every glance. Captain Arthur Hastings sat in a high-backed chair, his brow furrowed, his fingers tapping nervously on the armrest. The shocking confession of Clara Ashford that she had stabbed her uncle hung over the room like a dark cloud. Yet Poirot's skepticism had cast doubt on her words, turning the manor into a crucible of mistrust. "Mes amis," Poirot began, his voice cutting through the silence with the precision of a scalpel. "We find ourselves in a most peculiar situation. Mademoiselle Clara has confessed to the murder of Sir Reginald, yet the evidence, it does not support her claim. The locked study, the clean hands, the secret passage, these are the pieces of a puzzle, and Hercule Poirot, he will assemble them. But to do so, I must know the truth about each of you." Eleanor Ashford, her emerald gown shimmering in the firelight, straightened in her chair, her lips thinning. "This is preposterous, Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice icy. "Clara has admitted her guilt. Why must we be subjected to this inquisition?" Poirot's mustache twitched, a subtle sign of his amusement. "Madame, the confession of Mademoiselle Clara, it is like a mirror that reflects only part of the truth. To see the whole, we must look behind the glass. And so I ask you all to share what you know of Sir Reginald, his life, his enemies, his secrets." Lord Henry Ashford, slouched in an armchair with a glass of brandy, let out a bitter laugh. "Enemies? Reggie had more than a fox in a hunt. He was a hard man, Poirot. Ruthless in business, cold at home. Half the county had reason to hate him." Poirot turned to him, his gaze piercing. "And you, Lord Henry? As his brother, did you also have reason to hate him?" Lord Henry's hand tightened around his glass, his knuckles whitening. "We had our differences," he admitted, his voice rough. "Reggie held the purse strings, you see. Kept me on a tight leash. Said I was a disgrace to the family name. With my habits." He took a swig of brandy, his eyes darting away. Poirot nodded, filing the information away. "And these habits, they are gambling, oui? Debts, perhaps, that Sir Reginald refused to pay." Lord Henry's face flushed, but before he could respond, Eleanor interjected. "My husband was generous to a fault," she said, her tone sharp. "He supported Henry despite his recklessness. If anyone had cause to resent him, it wasn't family." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Generous, madame? Yet I sense a distance between you and Sir Reginald. A marriage, it is a partnership, but yours, it seems, strained." Eleanor's composure faltered, her fingers tightening on the armrest. "You overstep, Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice low. "My marriage is none of your concern." "Pardonnez-moi, madame," Poirot said, inclining his head. "But in a murder, all is of concern. Sir Reginald was a man of power, and power creates enemies, within the family as well as without." He turned to Dr. James Thornton, who sat quietly, his spectacles glinting in the firelight. "Doctor, you were Sir Reginald's physician. You knew him well, oui? His health, his state of mind. Tell me, was he a man at ease?" Thornton adjusted his glasses, his movements precise but nervous. "Sir Reginald was in robust health," he said, his voice measured. "But he was troubled. He spoke often of threats of enemies in his business dealings. He was cautious, perhaps even paranoid." "Paranoid?" Poirot echoed, his tone inviting elaboration. And did he name these enemies? Thornton hesitated, glancing at Victor Crane, who lounged against the mantel with an air of casual confidence. He mentioned no names, Thornton said finally, but he was uneasy about certain transactions. Poirot's gaze shifted to Crane, whose smile was as sharp as a blade. Monsieur Crane, you are a rival of Sir Reginald's, no? A man in your position, perhaps you had reason to wish him ill? Crane chuckled, swirling the whiskey in his glass. Rival, yes, but murder. That's a bit dramatic, Poirot. Reggie and I had our tussles, but it was all business. Besides, I was in the billiard room with Henry when the scream was heard. Ask him. Lord Henry nodded, though his eyes were unfocused. That's right. We were knocking balls about, heard. The scream came running. Poirot made a mental note of the alibi, his mind already testing its seams. He turned to Margaret Lyle, who sat with her notebook open, her pen poised as if recording the conversation. Mademoiselle Lyle, as Sir Reginald's secretary, you were privy to his affairs. Tell me, what was his state of mind in the days before his death? Margaret's eyes met his, cool and unflinching. Sir Reginald was under pressure, she said, her voice crisp. He was negotiating a major deal, the sale of Ashford Industries. It was contentious, but he was determined to see it through. A sale? Poirot's eyebrows rose. And who stood to benefit from this deal? Or, perhaps more importantly, who stood to lose? Margaret's lips pressed into a thin line. The details were confidential, Monsieur Poirot, but many had stakes in the outcome. Shareholders, competitors, even family. Poirot nodded, his mind racing. The sale of Ashford Industries was a thread worth pulling. He turned to Anna Brooks, who had returned from Clara's room and stood. By the door, her arms crossed. Madame Brooks, you have served the Ashford family for many years, oui? You know their secrets, their sorrows. What can you tell me of Sir Reginald and Mademoiselle Clara? Anna's eyes narrowed, her loyalty to Clara evident. Sir Reginald was hard on her, she said, her voice gruff. Always pushing her, controlling her. Clara's a gentle soul, but she's got spirit. If she says she did it, maybe she had her reasons. Reasons, madame? Poirot said softly. Or perhaps a burden she carries for another. Anna's jaw tightened and she said no more. Poirot stepped back, addressing the group. Each of you holds a piece of the truth. Sir Reginald's death, it is not the act of a single moment, but the culmination of many secrets. I ask you to reflect, to consider what you know. Tomorrow, we will speak again. As the guests dispersed, their footsteps echoing in the cavernous halls, Hastings leaned toward Poirot. I say, Poirot, this lot's a tangled mess. Henry's in debt, Eleanor is hiding something, and that Crane fellow's too smooth by half. But Clara, why stick to her story if it's not true? Poirot's eyes twinkled. The heart, mon ami, it is a complex thing. Clara's confession, it is not for herself, I think. She shields someone, or something. We must learn what. The next morning, the storm showed no sign of abating, its gray light filtering through the manor's leaded windows. Poirot and Hastings began their interviews in earnest, starting with Lord Henry. They met in the library, a vast room lined with books and dominated by a portrait of Sir Reginald in his prime, his eyes stern and unyielding. Lord Henry slumped, in a chair, his hand shaking as he poured himself a drink. What do you want, Poirot? He asked, his voice weary. I told you Reggie and I weren't close. He bailed me out of debts more times than I can count, but he never let me forget it. Poirot sat opposite him, his posture impeccable. These debts, Lord Henry, they were substantial, oui? And Sir Reginald, he threatened to cut you off? Henry's eyes flickered with resentment. He said I was a liability, said he'd leave me nothing in his will if I didn't shape up. But I didn't kill him, Poirot. I'm no murderer. Perhaps not, Poirot said, his tone neutral. But the will, it is a motive, no? Tell me, who else stood to inherit? Henry shrugged, taking a swig of his drink. Eleanor, of course. Clara, maybe, though Reggie was always on about her being too frail to handle money. And then there's the business. Word was he was selling it, which would have left a tidy sum. Poirot made a note, his mind turning to the burned letter fragment he had found in the study. The sale of Ashford Industries was a recurring theme, a thread that connected the guests in ways yet to be uncovered. He dismissed Lord Henry and sent for Eleanor. Eleanor entered the library with the grace of a queen, but her eyes were guarded, her hands clasped tightly. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, seating herself. "I hope this will be brief. I am still grieving." "Naturellement, madame," Poirot said, his voice gentle. "But grief, it does not obscure the truth. Your husband, he was a man of many enemies. Were you among them?" Eleanor's gaze hardened. "You are bold, monsieur. Reginald, and I had our differences, but I loved him. He provided for me, for this family. Provided we," Poirot said, leaning forward. "But love, it is not always enough. I sense a distance, madame. Perhaps another held your affection?" Eleanor's face paled, but she recovered quickly. "You are mistaken," she said, rising. "I have nothing more to say." As she left, Hastings whispered, "She's hiding something, Poirot. Did you see her face when you mentioned another?" "Oui, mon ami," Poirot replied. "The heart. It betrays what the lips go." Chapter 5. The Doctor's Dilemma. The storm that gripped Ashford Manor showed no signs of relenting, its winds howling like a banshee through the ancient oaks, shaking the leaded windows and casting eerie shadows across the manor's grand halls. The air inside was heavy with the weight of suspicion, each guest a potential conspirator in the murder of Sir Reginald Ashford, whose body still lay in the sealed study, a grim reminder of the violence that had shattered the manor's opulence. Hercule Poirot, his small frame a beacon of calm amidst the chaos, sat in the library, his notebook open before him, his pen poised as he pieced together the fragments of the mystery. Captain Arthur Hastings stood by the window, peering out at the relentless rain, his face etched with unease. "Poirot," Hastings said, turning from the window. "This business with Clara's confession, it's got me all muddled. She says she did it, but you're convinced she didn't. And now we've got secret passages, burned letters, and a house full of people who all seem to have something to hide. Where do we even start?" Poirot's mustache twitched, a faint smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Mon ami, we start where the truth begins to unravel, in the hearts of those who knew Sir Reginald best. Each guest, they carry a piece of the puzzle. Today we shall speak with Dr. Thornton. The physician, he knows the secrets of the body, but perhaps also the secrets of the soul." Hastings frowned, rubbing his chin. "Thornton? He seems a bit nervous, I'll grant you, but he's just a doctor. What could he have to do with this?" Poirot closed his notebook with a snap, rising from his chair. "That, Hastings, is what we shall discover. The doctor, he is not merely a healer, he is a confidant, a keeper of secrets. And in a house such as this, secrets are the currency of murder." They sent for Dr. James Thornton, who arrived in the library with a cautious air, his spectacles glinting in the dim light of the chandelier. He was a wiry man, his face lined with the strain of sleepless nights, his hands fidgeting as he adjusted his tie. "Monsieur Poirot, Captain Hastings," he said, his voice steady but laced with unease. "I trust this won't take long. I've patients to attend to, even in this storm." Poirot gestured to a chair, his smile disarming. "Please, doctor, sit. Your patients, they must wait a little longer. For the matter of Sir Reginald's death, it is most pressing. You were his physician. Oui? You knew his health, his habits, his fears. Tell me, what was the state of Sir Reginald's mind in the days before his death?" Thornton sat, his posture rigid. "Sir Reginald was in excellent health physically," he said, choosing his words carefully. "But mentally, he was troubled. He spoke of enemies, of threats to his business. He was particularly anxious about the sale of Ashford Industries. He believed it would provoke retaliation." "Retaliation?" Poirot's eyes narrowed, his voice soft but probing. "From whom, doctor? A rival like Monsieur Crane, or perhaps someone closer to home?" Thornton's fingers twitched, and he adjusted his spectacles again. "He didn't name names, Monsieur Poirot. He was guarded, even with me. But he mentioned a scandal from years past, something he feared might be exposed if the sale went through." Poirot leaned forward, his gaze piercing. "A scandal, you say? And you, doctor, you have no knowledge of this scandal? As his physician, you were privy to his confidences, no?" Thornton's face paled slightly, but he shook his head. I knew only what he chose to tell me. My role was to treat his ailments, not to pry into his affairs. Poirot's smile was polite but skeptical. And yet, Doctor, I have learned that you prescribed sedatives for Sir Reginald. A man in robust health, as you say, yet he required such medication. Why? Thornton hesitated, his eyes darting to the side. He suffered from insomnia, he said finally. The pressures of his business, the sale, it weighed on him. I prescribed a mild sedative to help him sleep. Poirot nodded, his mind cataloging the information. And these sedatives, they were kept where? In his study, perhaps? Or in your medical bag? Thornton's hands clenched briefly. In my bag, Monsieur Poirot. I kept strict control over them. Sir Reginald was not a man to misuse medication. Indeed, Poirot said, his tone neutral. And yet I must ask you to show me this bag. A matter of routine, you understand? Thornton's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Very well. It's in my room. They followed Thornton to his guest suite, a modest room on the second floor, its walls lined with faded wallpaper and a single window overlooking the storm-swept grounds. Thornton retrieved a leather medical bag from a dresser, opening it to reveal an array of vials, instruments, and bandages. He rummaged through it, his brow furrowing. That's odd, he muttered. The sedative vial, it's not here. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Not here, Doctor? A missing vial of sedative, in a house where a man has been murdered. This is most curious, no? Thornton's face flushed. I don't know how it happened, Monsieur Poirot. I swear I kept it secure. Hastings, standing by the door, raised an eyebrow. Secure, eh? Seems a bit careless for a doctor losing. Something like that. Poirot raised a hand, silencing Hastings. Careless, perhaps, or deliberate. Tell me, Doctor, who had access to your bag? Thornton shook his head, his voice rising. No one, Monsieur Poirot. I kept it in my room, locked in the dresser. Only I had the key. Locked, you say? Poirot's gaze swept the room, landing on the dresser. He approached it, examining the lock, which showed faint scratches around the keyhole. This lock, it has been tampered with, I think. Someone, they wish to take something from your bag without your knowledge. Thornton's eyes widened. Tampered with? But who would? That, Poirot said, is what we must discover. For now, Doctor, you will remain in the manor. No one leaves until the truth is revealed. As Thornton left, his shoulders slumped, Hastings turned to Poirot. Good Lord, Poirot, do you think someone stole the sedative to use on Sir Reginald? Could it be tied to the murder? Poirot's eyes twinkled. The sedative, mon ami, it is a clue of great importance. A man stabbed in the heart, yet no sign of struggle. This suggests he was incapacitated, oui? The sedative, it may have been, the prelude to the fatal blow. They returned to the library, where Poirot began to pace, his mind racing. The missing sedative vial was a new thread in the tapestry of the mystery, one that pointed to a calculated act rather than a crime of passion. Clara's confession, with its lack of physical evidence, seemed even less plausible now. Poirot's thoughts turned to the other guests, each with their own motives and opportunities. He sent for Anna Brooks, the housekeeper, whose fierce loyalty to Clara had not gone unnoticed. Anna entered the library with a scowl, her arms crossed. What do you want now, Monsieur Poirot? She asked, her voice gruff. Clara's told you everything, why keep hounding us? Poirot's smile was gentle but firm. Madame Brooks, your devotion to Mademoiselle Clara, it is admirable. But devotion, it can blind us to the truth. Tell me, what was the nature of Sir Reginald's treatment of his niece? She speaks of cruelty. What form did it take? Anna's eyes narrowed, but she answered. Sir Reginald was a tyrant to her, always controlling her, telling her she was weak, unfit to manage her own life. He threatened to send her away to an asylum, if you can believe it. Said her nerves were a liability. An asylum? Poirot's eyebrows rose. This is most serious. And you, madame, you saw this cruelty firsthand? Anna nodded, her jaw tight. I raised Clara, near enough. Her parents died when she was young and Sir Reginald took her in, but he treated her like a burden. She deserved better. Poirot leaned forward, his voice soft. And this treatment, it drove her to confess to murder? Or perhaps to protect someone else? Anna's face hardened and she stood. I've said enough. Clara's no killer, but if she says she did it, that's her business. As Anna left, Hastings shook his head. She's loyal to a fault, Poirot. But if Clara's protecting someone, who could it be? Anna herself? Perhaps, Poirot said, his mind elsewhere. But the sedative, Hastings, it points to a plan, a conspiracy. We must learn who had access to the doctor's bag. They continued their inquiries, speaking next with Margaret Lyle, whose sharp intellect and composed demeanor intrigued Poirot. She sat in the library, her notebook open, her pen tapping rhythmically against the page. Monsieur Poirot, she said, her voice crisp. I assume you're digging into the sale of Ashford Industries. It's no secret it caused friction. Indeed, mademoiselle, Poirot said. And you, as Sir Reginald's secretary, you were at the heart of this deal. Tell me, who opposed it most strongly? Margaret's eyes met his, unflinching. Victor. Crane stood to gain the most, but he also risked losing leverage if the deal fell through. Lord Henry was furious, thought it would cut him out of any inheritance. Even Eleanor had concerns, though she hid them well. And you? Poirot asked. What was your position? Margaret's lips curved slightly. I did my job, Monsieur Poirot. I advised Sir Reginald, nothing more. Poirot nodded, unconvinced. He dismissed her and sent for Victor Crane, whose charm was as polished as ever. Poirot, Crane said, lighting a cigarette, you're wasting your time. The sale was business, not murder. I was with Henry in the billiard room when it happened. And me. Alibi, Poirot said. It is only as strong as its witness. And Lord Henry, he is not a man of great reliability, no? Crane's smile faltered. You're a sharp one, Poirot. But I've got no motive. Reggie's death doesn't help me. It complicates the deal. Perhaps, Poirot said, but complications they can be. The storm that enveloped Ashford Manor raged with unrelenting fury, its winds screaming through the ancient trees and battering the stone walls, as if nature itself conspired to keep the truth of Sir Reginald Ashford's murder locked within the manor's confines. Inside, the atmosphere was no less turbulent, the air thick with suspicion and the weight of unspoken secrets. The grand drawing room where the guests had gathered earlier now felt like a stage for a drama yet to unfold, its crimson damask walls and flickering firelight casting an eerie glow over the assembled faces. Hercule Poirot, his small frame, a picture of composure, stood by the mantel, his green eyes scanning the room with the precision of a watchmaker. Captain Arthur Hastings, ever his loyal shadow, paced near the window, his brow furrowed as he grappled with the growing complexity of the case. Poirot, Hastings said, his voice low but urgent. This business is getting murkier by the minute. Clara's confession doesn't add up, the sedative's missing, and now we've got a secret passage and a burned letter. It's like trying to solve a puzzle with half the pieces missing. Poirot's mustache twitched, a faint sign of his amusement. Mon ami, the puzzle, it is not missing pieces. It is merely that we have not yet found their proper place. Each clue, the passage, the sedative, the confession, they are threads in a tapestry. And today we shall pull the thread of Mademoiselle Margaret Lyle, the secretary. She is a woman of intellect, of ambition. Such qualities, they are dangerous when mixed with motive. Hastings raised an eyebrow. Margaret? She's sharp, I'll give you that, but she's just a secretary. What motive could she have? Poirot's eyes gleamed. Just a secretary, Hastings? No. A woman like Mademoiselle Lyle. She sees all, knows all. She is the keeper of Sir Reginald's secrets, his plans, his enemies. And ambition, it is a fire that burns quietly but fiercely. Come, we shall speak with her. They sent for Margaret Lyle, who arrived in the library with her usual composure, her auburn hair pulled back in a severe bun, her leather notebook clutched in one hand. She wore a tailored gray dress, its simplicity a stark contrast to the opulence of the manor, yet her presence commanded attention. She sat across from Poirot, her posture straight, her eyes meeting his without flinching. Mademoiselle Lyle, Poirot began, his voice smooth as velvet. You are a woman of great efficiency, oui? As Sir Reginald's secretary, you were at the heart of his empire. His business, his correspondence, his plans, they passed through your hands. Tell me, what was the nature of the sale of Ashford Industries and who stood to lose the most from it? Margaret's lips curved slightly, a hint of a smile that did not reach her eyes. You go straight to the point, Monsieur Poirot. The sale was Sir Reginald's most ambitious move, a merger with a rival firm led by Victor Crane's company. It would have consolidated his wealth but diluted his control. Many opposed it, shareholders who feared losing influence, competitors who wanted a piece of the deal, even family members. Poirot leaned forward, his hands clasped. And you, mademoiselle? What was your role in this deal? Did you support it, or did you too have reservations? Margaret's eyes flickered, but her voice remained steady. My role was to advise and execute Sir Reginald's wishes. I prepared the contracts, coordinated with his solicitors, and ensured the paperwork was in order. As for my opinion, it was irrelevant. Sir Reginald valued results, not sentiments. Results, Poirot echoed, his tone thoughtful. And yet, mademoiselle, I sense ambition in you. A woman of your intellect, she does not content herself with mere paperwork, no? Perhaps you saw an opportunity in this sale, an opportunity for advancement, for power. Margaret's smile tightened. You flatter me, Monsieur Poirot, but I am a secretary, not a schemer. My ambition is to serve, nothing more. Poirot's gaze did not waver. And yet, in the study, I found a note in your handwriting. He must be stopped. Tell me, mademoiselle, to whom did this refer and why? Margaret's composure faltered for a fraction of a second, her fingers tightening on her notebook. You're mistaken, she said quickly. I wrote no such note. Poirot produced a folded slip of paper from his pocket, its edges crisp, the handwriting unmistakably hers. This was found in your room, hidden beneath a stack of papers. He must be stopped. These are your words, are they not? Margaret's face paled, but she recovered swiftly. It was a private note, Monsieur Poirot. A thought, nothing more. Sir Reginald's sale was risky. Some of us feared it would ruin the company. I wrote it in a moment of frustration. Frustration, Poirot said, his voice soft but probing. Or perhaps desperation? Tell me, mademoiselle, where were you when Sir Reginald was murdered? Margaret's eyes narrowed. I was in the library working late. I often stayed up to review documents for Sir Reginald. I heard the scream and came running with the others. Alone in the library? Poirot asked. With no one to confirm your presence? Margaret's jaw tightened. I work alone. Monsieur Poirot, it's the nature of my duties. Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. We shall see, mademoiselle. For now you may go. As Margaret left, Hastings turned to Poirot, his eyes wide. Good Lord, Poirot, that note. He must be stopped. It's damning, isn't it? Could she be the killer? Poirot shook, his head, his mind already turning over the new clue. The note, it is a piece of the puzzle, but not the whole picture. Mademoiselle Lyle, she is clever. Perhaps too clever. We must learn more of her ambitions, her connections. They moved to the library, where Margaret claimed to have been working. The room was vast, its shelves towering to the ceiling, filled with leather-bound volumes and dusty tomes. A single desk stood by the window, its surface cluttered with papers, an inkwell, and a typewriter. Poirot examined the desk, his gloved fingers tracing the edges of a stack of documents. One caught his eye, a draft of the sale agreement for Ashford Industries with handwritten notes in the margin. The handwriting matched Margaret's, but the notes were cryptic. Crane's terms unacceptable. Risk to legacy. Interesting, Poirot murmured, slipping the document into his pocket. Mademoiselle Lyle, she was more involved in this deal than she claims. Hastings peered over his shoulder. You think she was plotting against the sale? But why? And how does that tie to the murder? Poirot's eyes twinkled. The sale, mon ami. It is the heart of this mystery. It created enemies, stirred ambitions, and perhaps drove someone to kill. We must learn who stood to lose the most and who stood to gain. They continued their investigation, returning to the study to re-examine the crime scene. The secret passage discovered earlier loomed in Poirot's mind. He sent for Grayson, the butler, to inquire about the manor's hidden corridors. Grayson, his face as impassive as ever, confirmed the existence of several passages, used in centuries past, for servants or escapes during sieges. The passage from the study leads to the library, he said, but it's rarely used. Only the family and senior staff know of it. And Mademoiselle Lyle? Poirot asked. As Sir Reginald's secretary, would she know of this passage? Grayson hesitated. It's possible, sir. She's been with the family for years, privy to many of the manor's secrets. Poirot nodded, dismissing Grayson. The passage was a critical clue, suggesting the killer had intimate knowledge of the manor's layout. Margaret, with her access and ambition, was a plausible suspect, but Poirot's instincts told him the truth was more complex. He sent for Clara Ashford, hoping to probe deeper into her confession. Clara entered the library, her face pale but composed, Anna Brooks trailing behind her like a protective shadow. Monsieur Poirot, Clara said, her voice soft, I've told you everything. I killed my uncle. Why do you keep asking questions? Poirot's smile was gentle but firm. Mademoiselle, your confession, it is like a book with missing pages. You say you acted in rage, yet the evidence, the clean hands, the locked room, it tells a different story. Tell me, did you know of the secret passage in the study? Clara's eyes widened, but she shook her head. No, I didn't. I went to the study and he was there and I... Her voice broke and she looked away. Poirot leaned forward. And this rage, it was because of his cruelty? Or perhaps because of the sale of Ashford Industries? Did he threaten your future, mademoiselle? Clara's hands trembled and Anna stepped forward. That's enough, the housekeeper snapped. She's told you what she did. Leave her be. Poirot raised a hand, his voice calm. Madame Brooks, your loyalty, it is commendable, but the truth, it will not be silenced. Mademoiselle Clara, if you protect someone, you do them no favor by hiding the truth. Clara's eyes filled with tears, but she said no more. As she and Anna left, Hastings shook his head. She's stubborn, Poirot. But if she didn't use the passage, who did? Poirot's mind raced, piecing together the clues. The note in Margaret's handwriting, the secret passage, the missing sedative, the burned letter. He returned to the drawing room, where the other guests sat in uneasy silence. Eleanor Ashford stared into the fire, her face unreadable. Lord Henry nursed another drink, his eyes bloodshot. Dr. Thornton adjusted his spectacles, his hands unsteady. Victor Crane leaned against the mantel, his charm undimmed but his gaze watchful. Monsieur Poirot, Crane said, breaking the silence, you're turning this house upside down. Any closer to catching your killer? Poirot's smile was enigmatic. The truth, Monsieur Crane, it is like a shadow. It moves when the lig... Chapter 7. The rival's charm. The storm that besieged Ashford Manor roared with unrelenting fury, its winds shrieking through the ancient trees and hammering the stone walls with sheets of rain. The manor, isolated by flooded roads and a tempest that seemed to mirror the chaos within, stood as a fortress of secrets, each room and corridor whispering of hidden truths. Inside the grand drawing room, the fire crackled fitfully, casting long shadows across the faces of the guests, who sat in a tense tableau, their eyes darting with suspicion and unease. Hercule Poirot, his small frame a beacon of calm amidst the storm, stood near the mantel, his gloved hands clasped behind his back, his green eyes gleaming with the intensity of a man who saw not just faces, but motives. Captain Arthur Hastings, his loyal companion, paced near the window, his brow furrowed as he wrestled with the growing complexity of the mystery. Poirot, Hastings said, his voice low but tinged with frustration. This case is like a blasted maze. Clara's confession, the secret passage, the missing sedative, that note from Margaret. It's all piling up and I can't make heads or tails of it. And now you're eyeing Victor Crane? He's a smooth talker, I'll grant you, but a murderer? Poirot's Mustache twitched, a subtle sign of his amusement. Mon ami, the charm, it is often a mask. Monsieur Crane, he is a man of ambition, a rival to Sir Reginald in business and perhaps in other matters. His presence here, it is no accident. We must learn what lies beneath his smile. Hastings shook his head, unconvinced. He was with Lord Henry in the billiard room when the scream was heard. That's a solid alibi, isn't it? An alibi, Hastings. It is only as strong as the man who confirms it, Poirot replied, his voice soft but firm. And Lord Henry, with his debts and his drinking, he is not a pillar of reliability. Come, we shall speak with Monsieur Crane and see what his charm conceals. They sent for Victor Crane, who sauntered into the library with the confidence of a man accustomed to commanding a room. His tailored suit was impeccable, his dark hair slicked back, and his smile carried a hint of amusement, as if he found the entire affair mildly entertaining. He lit a cigarette, the flame briefly illuminating his sharp features, and leaned against the desk, his posture relaxed but his eyes watchful. Monsieur Poirot, Crane said, exhaling a plume of smoke, you've got the whole house in a tizzy. Digging into everyone's secrets, eh? What's my turn in the hot seat about? Poirot's smile was polite but piercing. Monsieur Crane, you are a man of business, a rival to Sir Reginald. His death, it is most convenient for you, nah? The sale of Ashford Industries, it was to your advantage, yet I sense there was more at stake. Tell me, what was your relationship with Sir Reginald? Crane chuckled, flicking ash into a nearby tray. Relationship? We were competitors, Poirot, not chums. Reggie was a tough old bird, ruthless, sharp as a tack. We locked horns over the sale, sure. He wanted to merge Ashford Industries with my firm, but on his terms. I pushed back, wanted a better deal. That's business, not murder. Poirot's eyes narrowed. And yet, monsieur, I found a map in your room. A map of this manor, with the study marked. Why would a guest, a mere visitor, need such a thing? Crane's smile faltered, for a fraction of a second, but he recovered quickly. Curiosity, Poirot. This place is a maze. Passages, staircases, secret nooks. I like to know my surroundings. Doesn't mean I snuck into Reggie's study and stuck a letter opener in him. Perhaps not, Poirot said, his tone measured. But the sale, it was contentious, oui? Who else opposed it? Who stood to lose if Sir Reginald succeeded? Crane took a long drag on his cigarette, his eyes narrowing. Plenty of folks weren't happy. Lord Henry thought it'd cut him out of any inheritance. Eleanor was cagey, didn't like losing control of the family fortune. Even that secretary, Margaret, had her nose out of joint, though she's too sharp to show it. Poirot nodded, filing away the information. And you, Monsieur Crane? The sale, it would have made you a powerful man. But Sir Reginald's death, it complicates things, does it not? Crane shrugged, his smile returning. Complicates, sure, but I'll manage, always do. Besides, I was with Henry when the scream went up. Ask him. Indeed I shall, Poirot said, his voice soft but unyielding. But tell me, monsieur, did you know of the secret passage from the library to the study? Crane's hand paused, the cigarette halfway to his lips. Secret passage? News to me, Poirot. Sounds like something out of a Gothic novel. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. We shall see, monsieur. For now you may go. As Crane left, Hastings turned to Poirot, his eyes wide. That map, Poirot, it's suspicious, isn't it? Why would he need to mark the study unless he was planning something? Poirot's gaze was distant, his mind racing. The map, mon ami, it is a clue, but not yet a conclusion. Monsieur Crane, he is a man who plans, who calculates. But is he a murderer? That remains to be seen. They moved to Crane's room to verify his belongings with Grayson's reluctant permission. The room was tidy, its furnishings luxurious but impersonal. On the desk, Poirot found the map, a hand-drawn sketch of the manor's ground floor with the study circled in red ink. Nearby was a letter, half-written, addressed to a business associate. Reginald's terms are untenable. We must find another way. Poirot slipped the letter into his pocket, his mind turning over its implications. Another way, Poirot murmured. What way, Monsieur Crane? They returned to the library, where Poirot examined the secret passage again. The narrow corridor, its walls damp and cobwebbed, led from the library to the study, its entrance hidden behind a tapestry. Poirot noted the footprints in the dust, large, likely a man's, and too big for Clara's delicate feet. "The killer, they use this passage," he said. "But Crane, he claims ignorance. Is he truthful or is his charm a lie?" Hastings scratched his head. If Crane used the passage, he could have slipped into the study, killed Sir Reginald and slipped out, locking the door behind him. "But why frame Clara?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Frame, mon ami? Or perhaps Clara's confession, it is a shield for another. We must speak with her again." They sent for Clara, who arrived with Anna Brooks at her side, her face pale, but her eyes resolute. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice soft but steady, "I've told you what I did. Why do you keep questioning me?" Poirot's tone was gentle but firm. "Mademoiselle, your confession, it is like a painting with colors that do not match. You say you stabbed your uncle, yet the passage, the sedative, the clean hands, they tell a different story. Did you know of Monsieur Crane's map? Did he speak to you of the sale?" Clara's eyes flickered, but she shook her head. "I don't know about any map. And the sale? Uncle Reginald said it would secure the family's future, but he never told me details." "And yet," Poirot said, "you confessed to protect someone, no? Perhaps someone involved in the sale?" Clara's hands trembled and Anna stepped forward. "Leave her be," the housekeeper snapped. "She's said her piece." Poirot raised a hand. "Madame Brooks, your loyalty, it is admirable, but it blinds you. Mademoiselle Clara, the truth, it will free you. Speak, I implore you." Clara's eyes filled with tears, but she shook her head. "There's nothing more to say." As they left, Hastings turned to Poirot. "She's stubborn as a mule, Poirot. But if she's protecting someone, could it be Crane? He's got the motive, the map, the charm to pull it off." "Perhaps," Poirot said, his mind elsewhere. "But the charm of Monsieur Crane, it is a weapon, not a motive. We must learn what drove the killer to act." They returned to the drawing room where the other guests sat in uneasy silence. Eleanor Ashford stared into the fire, her face unreadable. Lord Henry clutched a glass, his eyes bloodshot. Dr. Thornton adjusted his spectacles, his hands unsteady. Margaret Lyle sat with her notebook, her pen tapping rhythmically. Poirot's gaze lingered on each, his mind weaving connections between Crane's map, the sale, and the secret passage. He approached Eleanor, his voice soft. "Madame, your husband's sale, it was a source of conflict. Did Monsieur Crane ever discuss it with you privately?" Eleanor's eyes narrowed. "Victor?" "No, Monsieur Poirot. Our conversations were social. Nothing more." Poirot nodded, unconvinced. He turned to Lord Henry. "And you, monsieur? You were with Monsieur Crane in the billiard room. Did he speak of the study, of the passage?" Henry shrugged, his voice slurred. "We talked about the game, the weather, nothing serious. Crane's a decent chap, Poirot. Don't see him as a killer." Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "The decent, they can be the most dangerous, no?" The chapter closed with Poirot in his room, his notebook open, sketching a diagram of the manor with the study and passage marked. The storm outside roared on, but the storm within Ashford Manor was far more perilous, and Poirot knew that Victor Crane's charm was a key to unlocking the mystery, but the truth remained just beyond his grasp. The storm that besieged Ashford Manor continued its relentless assault, its winds howling like a chorus of restless spirits, rattling the ancient windows and casting an oppressive gloom over the sprawling estate. The manor, cut off from the world by flooded roads and torrential rain, was a crucible of secrets, each room and corridor whispering of hidden motives and unspoken truths. Inside the library, where Hercule Poirot and Captain Arthur Hastings had retreated to continue their investigation, the air was thick with the scent of old books and the faint, lingering trace of ash from the study's fireplace. Poirot sat at a heavy oak desk, his notebook open, his pen poised as he studied the charred fragment of paper he had retrieved from the study, the half-burned letter that held the promise of a crucial clue. Hastings stood by the window, his face etched with frustration, his hands clasped behind his back as he watched the rain lash the grounds. "Poirot," Hastings said, turning from the window. "This case is like trying to navigate a fog without a compass. Clara's confession, the secret passage, the missing sedative, that map in Crane's room, and now this burned letter. It's all piling up, and I can't see the forest for the trees. What's the significance of this scrap of paper, anyway?" Poirot's mustache twitched, a subtle sign of his amusement at Hastings' exasperation. "Mon ami, the forest, it is vast, but the trees, they each tell a story. This letter," he held up the charred fragment, "it is a whisper from the killer, a clue to their motive. The words we can read, deal, must not, and expose. They point to a secret Sir Reginald held, a secret worth killing for. We must reconstruct this letter, Hastings, and uncover its meaning." Hastings frowned, peering at the fragment. "Reconstruct it? It's barely a corner of a page, Poirot. How do you propose to do that?" Poirot's eyes gleamed with the intensity of a man whose mind was already several steps ahead. "The little gray cells, Hastings. They see what the eyes cannot. The ash, the ink, the paper, they will speak to us. But first we must return to the study, where this letter met its fate." They made their way through the manor's labyrinthine corridors, the storm's roar a constant backdrop to their footsteps. The study, still sealed at Poirot's insistence, was a grim tableau. Sir Reginald's body lay slumped over the desk, the letter opener protruding from his chest. The blood, now dried to a dark crimson, the broken window let in drafts of cold air, and the fireplace where the letter had been burned glowed faintly with dying embers. Poirot approached the fireplace, his gloved hands deftly sifting through the ash with a poker. He retrieved several, more fragments, each blackened but bearing traces of ink. "Observe, Hastings," Poirot said, laying the fragments on a clean cloth. "The paper, it is of fine quality, the kind used for formal correspondence. The ink, it is black, not blue, suggesting a fountain pen of some expense. And the words, here another fragment, Scandal and Henry. This letter, it was no mere note, it was a document of consequence." Hastings leaned closer, his eyes wide. "Henry? You mean Lord Henry, Sir Reginald's brother? Could this be about his gambling debts?" "Perhaps," Poirot said, his voice thoughtful. "But a scandal, it is more than debts, none. It is a secret that threatens reputation, power, perhaps even freedom. We must speak with Lord Henry and learn what he knows of this letter." They sent for Lord Henry Ashford, who shuffled into the study with the unsteady gait of a man who had sought solace in a bottle. His tweed suit was rumpled, his face flushed, and his eyes bloodshot. He glanced nervously at his brother's body, then at Poirot, who stood holding the charred fragments like a judge presenting evidence. "Monsieur." "Poirot," Henry said, his voice slurred. "What's this about?" "I've told you all I know. Reggie and I had our rows, but I didn't kill him." Poirot's smile was polite but unyielding. "Lord Henry, I do not accuse you yet. But this letter," he held up the fragments, "it speaks of a scandal, and your name appears. Tell me, what secret did Sir Reginald hold over you? A secret worth burning to conceal." Henry's face paled, and he reached for his flask only to find it empty. "A letter? I don't know anything about a letter. Reggie was always scribbling things. Business deals, threats, you name it. He liked to keep people on edge." "Edge, oui," Poirot said, stepping closer. "And you, Lord Henry, you were on edge, were you not? Your debts, they were a burden. And Sir Reginald, he refused to help unless you met his demands. What was this scandal he threatened to expose?" Henry's hands trembled and he sank into a chair. "It was nothing," he muttered. "Just some bad bets, a few deals that went sour. Reggie got wind of a rigged card game years ago. Nothing serious, but he held it over me. Said he'd ruin me if I didn't clean up my act." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "A rigged card game? This is the scandal? Or is there more, Lord Henry? Something tied to the sale of Ashford Industries, perhaps?" Henry's eyes darted away, and he shook his head. "I told you, I don't know about any letter. And the sale, Reggie said it'd secure the family, but I didn't trust it. Too many sharks like Crane circling. Poirot nodded, dismissing Henry with a wave. As the man stumbled out, Hastings turned to Poirot. He's hiding something, Poirot. That letter, it's got to be about more than a card game. Exactement, Poirot said, his voice low. The letter, it is the key to the motive. We must reconstruct it further, but we must also learn who else knew of this scandal. They returned to the library, where Poirot spread the fragments, on the desk piecing them together like a jigsaw puzzle. The words were sparse but telling. Deal must not proceed. Expose the scandal. Henry's ruin. Poirot's mind raced, connecting the fragments to the sale of Ashford Industries, the secret passage, and Clara's confession. The scandal, he murmured, it is tied to the sale, and the sale, it is tied to the murder. He sent for D. Margaret Lyle, whose sharp intellect and cryptic note, he must be stopped, had piqued his suspicion. Margaret entered the library with her usual composure, her notebook clutched in one hand, her eyes meeting Poirot's without hesitation. Mademoiselle Lyle, Poirot said, holding up the fragments. This letter, it speaks of a scandal and a deal. As Sir Reginald's secretary, you handled his correspondence. Did you write this letter or know of it? Margaret's lips pressed into a thin line. I wrote many letters for Sir Reginald, Monsieur Poirot, but not that one. If it's about the sale, it could have come from any number of parties, shareholders, competitors, even family. And this scandal, Poirot pressed, it mentions Lord Henry. What do you know of his troubles? Margaret's eyes flickered, but her voice remained steady. Lord Henry's gambling is no secret. Sir Reginald was frustrated with him, often threatened to cut him off. But a scandal? I know nothing specific. Poirot nodded, unconvinced. And your note, mademoiselle? He must be stopped. Was this about Sir Reginald or the sale? Margaret's composure faltered briefly. It was about the sale, she said. I thought it was a mistake, but it was a private thought, not a plan. Poirot dismissed her, his mind turning to Victor Crane, whose map of the manor had raised questions. He sent for Crane, who arrived with his usual charm, a cigarette dangling from his lips. Poirot, he said, you're like a bloodhound with these scraps of paper. What's the letter got to do with me? Poirot held up the fragments. This letter, Monsieur Crane, it speaks of a scandal and a deal. Your name, it is linked to the sale of Ashford Industries. Did Sir Reginald threaten to expose something about you? Crane laughed, exhaling smoke. Expose me? Reggie tried, but I've got no skeletons worth killing over. The sale was business, Poirot. Nothing personal. Business, Poirot said. It can be very personal, no? Your map, your presence in the billiard room, perhaps they are part of a larger plan. Crane's smile tightened. You're fishing, Poirot. I was with Henry, and that's the truth. Poirot dismissed him, turning to Hastings. The letter, mon ami, it is a window into the killer's mind. It points to a scandal, to Lord Henry, to the sale. But who wrote it, and who burned it? They returned to the study where Poirot sifted through the ash again, finding another fragment. Trust betrayed. The word sent a chill through him, suggesting a deeper betrayal within the family. He sent for Eleanor Ashford, whose cold demeanor had hinted at hidden tensions. Madame, Poirot said, showing her the fragments. This letter speaks of a scandal and a deal. Your husband, he held secrets over many, oui? Did he hold one? Over you? Eleanor's face was unreadable, her voice cold. My husband was a private man, Monsieur Poirot. If he had secrets, he kept them from me. Poirot's eyes gleamed. And yet, madame, I sense a distance between you. Perhaps a secret of your own? Eleanor stood, her eyes flashing. You overstep, monsieur. I have nothing to hide. She left. Hastings shook his head. She's as cold as ice, Poirot. Could she be involved? Perhaps, Poirot said, his mind racing. The letter, it is the heart of this mystery. We must learn who wrote it, and why it was burned. The chapter closed with Poirot in his room, his notebook filled with sketches of the letter's fragments. The words, scandal, Henry, and trust betrayed, circling in his mind. The storm outside roared on, but the storm within, Ashford Manor was far more dangerous, and Poirot knew the half-burned letter was the key to unlocking the truth. Chapter 9. Clara's Motive. Unravels. The storm that had trapped Ashford Manor in its icy grip showed no mercy, its winds howling like a tormented beast, tearing at the ancient oaks and lashing the stone walls with torrents of rain. The manor, isolated from the outside world by flooded roads and an unrelenting tempest, was a cauldron of secrets, each corridor and chamber pulsing with the weight of unspoken truths. Inside the library, where Hercule Poirot and Captain Arthur Hastings had retreated to sift through the mounting clues, the air was heavy with the scent of aged leather and the faint, lingering trace of ash from the half-burned letter. Poirot sat at a polished oak desk, his notebook open, his pen tracing delicate lines as he pieced together the fragments of the mystery. Hastings stood by the fire, his hands clasped behind his back, his face etched with a mixture of frustration and unease. "Poirot," Hastings said, turning from the hearth, "this case is like a blasted knot I can't untie. Clara's confession, the secret passage, the missing sedative, that note from Margaret Crane's map, and now the burned letter. It's all a jumble. And Clara, she's sticking to her story, but you're dead certain she didn't do it. Why's she so determined to take the blame?" Poirot's mustache twitched, a faint glimmer of amusement in his green eyes. "Mon ami, the heart of Mademoiselle Clara. It is a labyrinth, but not one without a path. Her confession, it is not the act of a guilty mind, but of a soul burdened by loyalty or fear. She protects someone, Hastings, or perhaps she shields, a truth too painful to reveal. Today we shall unravel her motive, for it is the key to this strange case." Hastings frowned, rubbing his chin. "Protecting someone? But who? Anna's loyal to her, but I can't see the housekeeper as a murderer. And the others, Eleanor, Henry Thornton, Margaret Crane, they've all got their own secrets. Where do we even begin?" Poirot closed his notebook with a soft thud, rising from his chair with the grace of a cat. "We begin, mon ami, with Mademoiselle Clara herself. Her words, her silences. They will guide us. But we must tread carefully, for her heart, it is fragile, yet resolute." They sent for Clara Ashford, who arrived in the library accompanied by Anna Brooks, her ever-present guardian. Clara's face was pale, her delicate features drawn with exhaustion, but her eyes held a quiet defiance. She wore a simple navy dress, her hands clasped tightly in her lap as she sat across from Poirot. Anna stood by the door, her arms crossed, her expression fierce, as if daring Poirot to push too far. "Mademoiselle Clara," Poirot began, his voice soft but commanding, "you have told us you killed your uncle, Sir Reginald. You speak of his cruelty, of your rage, yet the evidence, it does not agree. The clean hands, the locked study, the secret passage, these are not the marks of your crime. I ask you now, not as a detective, but as one who seeks the truth. Why do you confess to a murder you did not commit?" Clara's eyes met his, wide and shimmering with unshed tears. "I did it," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I hated him. He controlled my life, my future. I couldn't bear it any longer." Poirot leaned forward, his gaze piercing but gentle. "Controlled, oui? And this control, it was so great that you took a letter opener and plunged it into his heart? In a room locked from within with no blood on your hands? No, mademoiselle, this is not the truth. Tell me, what did Sir Reginald threaten? What drove you to this desperate act?" Clara's hands trembled and she looked away, her lips pressing into a thin line. Anna stepped forward, her voice sharp. "Leave her be, Monsieur Poirot. She's told you what she did. Why torment her?" Poirot raised a hand, his tone calm, but unyielding. "Madame Brooks, your loyalty, it is admirable, but it blinds you. Mademoiselle Clara, you carry a burden, one that is not yours alone. Speak, I implore you, for the truth. It will set you free." Clara's breath hitched, and for a moment, the room was silent, save for the storm's roar outside. Then, in a voice barely audible, she said, He was going to send me away to an asylum. He said I was unstable, a danger to the family name. I couldn't let him do that. Poirot's eyes narrowed, his mind racing. An asylum? This is a grave threat, mademoiselle. And for what reason did he believe you unstable? Clara's eyes filled with tears and she shook her head. He said I was too emotional, that I couldn't handle the family's affairs. He wanted me out of the way, especially with the sale of Ashford Industries. He said it was for my own good, but I knew it was to control the money, the legacy. Poirot nodded, his expression thoughtful. And this sale, it was to secure the family's future, yet it caused conflict. Did others know of his plan to send you away? Clara hesitated, her gaze flickering to Anna, who stood rigid by the door. I told Anna, she admitted. She was like a mother to me. She said he couldn't do it, that she'd protect me. Poirot's gaze shifted to Anna, whose face was a mask of barely contained anger. Madame Brooks, you knew of this threat? And what did you do to protect Mademoiselle Clara? Anna's jaw tightened. I told her to stand up to him, she said, her voice low. Sir Reginald was a bully, always lording over her. But I didn't kill him, if that's what you're thinking. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. No, madame, I do not accuse you yet. But your loyalty, it is a powerful thing. Did you see Mademoiselle Clara near the study that night? Clara's head snapped up, her eyes wide with panic. No, she cried before Anna could answer. I was alone. Anna had nothing to do with it. Poirot's eyes gleamed, catching the slip. Alone, mademoiselle? Yet you say you told Madame Brooks of your fears, and now you claim she was not near the study. But I saw you, Madame Brooks, in the corridor near the study shortly before the scream. Why were you there? Anna's face paled, but her voice was defiant. I was checking on Clara. She'd been upset all evening. I wanted to make sure she was safe. Safe, Poirot echoed, his tone probing. Or perhaps you sought to confront Sir Reginald yourself, to protect Mademoiselle Clara from his threats? Anna's eyes flashed, but she said no more. Clara reached for her hand, her voice trembling. Please, Monsieur Poirot, stop. I did it. It was me. Poirot leaned back, his hands clasped, his mind racing. Clara's desperation, Anna's protectiveness. They were pieces of a larger puzzle, one that pointed to a deeper motive. He dismissed them, turning to Hastings as the door closed behind them. She's shielding someone, Poirot, Hastings said, his voice urgent. Anna, maybe? Or someone else? But why take the blame? Poirot's eyes twinkled. The why, mon ami? It is the heart of this mystery. Clara's motive, it is not guilt, but sacrifice. We must learn who she protects, and why. They returned to the study where the crime scene remained untouched, a grim reminder of the violence that had shattered the manor. Poirot re-examined the fireplace, sifting through the ash for more fragments of the burned letter. He found another scrap, bearing the words betrayal and legacy. The words sent a chill through him, suggesting a motive rooted in family and fortune. Betrayal, Poirot murmured, slipping the fragment into his pocket. The letter, it speaks of a scandal, of Lord Henry, of a deal that must not proceed. But betrayal, this is personal, no? Hastings nodded, his eyes wide. Could Clara be protecting Henry? Or maybe Eleanor? She's been cold as ice, but she's got to know something. Poirot's mind turned to the other guests, each with their own secrets. He sent for Eleanor Ashford, whose icy demeanor had hinted at hidden tensions. She entered the library with the grace of a queen, her emerald gown catching the firelight, but her eyes were guarded. Madame, Poirot said, holding up the letter fragments. This letter speaks of a scandal, a betrayal. Your husband, he, held secrets over many. Did he hold one over you? Eleanor's lips thinned, her voice cold. My husband was a private man, Monsieur Poirot. If he had secrets, he kept them from me. And yet, Poirot said, I sense a distance between you, perhaps a betrayal of your own, a connection, perhaps, with Monsieur Crane. Eleanor's face paled, but she recovered quickly. "You are mistaken," she said, rising. "I have nothing to hide." As she left, Hastings whispered, "She's hiding something, Poirot. Did you see her reaction when you mentioned Crane?" "Oui, mon ami," Poirot said, his mind racing. "The heart, it betrays what the lips conceal." They continued their inquiries, speaking with Lord Henry, whose drunken ramblings revealed little new, and Dr. Thornton, whose nervousness suggested he knew more about the sedative than he admitted. Margaret Lyle, when questioned about the letter, denied any knowledge, but her sharp eyes lingered on the fragments as if calculating their significance. Victor Crane, ever charming, dismissed the letter as business nonsense bouse, but his casual demeanor felt rehearsed. Poirot returned to Clara's room later that evening, alone this time, hoping to catch her off guard. She sat by the fire, her face illuminated by the flickering flames, her hands clasped tightly. "Mademoiselle," he said softly, "I know you protect someone, Anna perhaps, or another, but this burden, it is too heavy for you. Tell me the truth and I will help you." Clara's eyes met his, filled with a quiet desperation. "I can't," she whispered. "If I tell you, it will destroy everything." Poirot nodded, his voice gentle. "Then we shall find the truth, another way. But know this, mademoiselle, the truth, it cannot be hidden forever." The chapter closed with Poirot in his room, his notebook filled with sketches of the letter fragments, the words betrayal and legacy circling in his mind. The storm outside roared. Chapter 10. The Missing Sedative. The storm that had imprisoned Ashford Manor in its relentless grasp showed no sign of abating, its winds shrieking through the ancient oaks and battering the stone walls with torrents of rain that seemed to mirror the turmoil within. The manor, cut off from the world by flooded roads and an unyielding tempest, was a labyrinth of secrets, each shadowed corridor and opulent chamber pulsing with the weight of hidden motives. In the library, where Hercule Poirot and Captain Arthur, Hastings had retreated to unravel the threads of Sir Reginald Ashford's murder, the air was thick with the scent of aged leather and the faint, acrid trace of ash from the half-burned letter. Poirot sat at a heavy oak desk, his notebook open, his pen tracing meticulous lines as he pieced together the growing web of clues. Hastings stood by the fire, his hands clasped behind his back, his face a mask of frustration and unease. "Poirot," Hastings said, turning from the hearth, "this case is like a blasted riddle wrapped in a fog. Clara's confession doesn't hold water. The secret passage points to someone with inside knowledge. Margaret's note is suspicious. Crane's map is downright incriminating, and that burned letter hints at a scandal. And now we've got a missing sedative from Thornton's bag. It's all piling up, and I can't see the end of it. What's the sedative got to do with anything?" Poirot's mustache twitched, a subtle glimmer of amusement in his green eyes. "Mon ami, the sedative, it is not merely a missing vial. It is a whisper of intent, a clue to the killer's method. Sir Reginald, he was stabbed with precision, yet there was no struggle, no sign of resistance. This suggests he was incapacitated, oui? The sedative, it may have been the silent partner to the letter opener. We must find this vial, Hastings, and learn who took it." Hastings frowned, rubbing his chin. "Incapacitated? You mean someone drugged him before the killing? That's cold-blooded, Poirot. But who? Thornton's the doctor, but he seemed genuinely shocked the vial was gone. Could someone have stolen it to frame him?" Poirot closed his notebook with a soft snap, rising from his chair with the grace of a man whose mind was already several steps ahead. "Exactement, Hastings. The missing sedative, it is a deliberate act, either to commit the crime or to obscure it. We must retrace its path from Dr. Thornton's bag to the hands of the killer, and we must do so with care. For the truth, it is close, yet slippery." They began their investigation in Dr. James Thornton's guest suite, where the missing sedative vial had first been discovered. The room was modest compared to the manor's grandeur, its faded wallpaper and single window overlooking the storm-swept grounds lending it a somber air. Thornton stood by the dresser, his spectacles glinting in the dim light, his hands fidgeting as he watched Poirot examine the tampered lock. Monsieur Poirot, Thornton said, his voice strained. I swear, I kept the bag secure. The sedative was there yesterday morning. I checked it myself. Someone must have broken into the dresser. Poirot's gloved fingers traced the scratches around the keyhole, his eyes narrowing. Broken in, oui, he murmured. The lock. It has been forced, but with care, as if the thief wished to leave no obvious trace. Tell me, doctor, who had access to this room? Thornton shook his head, his face pale. No one, Monsieur Poirot. I locked the door when I left, and the bag was in the dresser. Only I had the key. Poirot's gaze swept the room, landing on a small table by the bed where a glass of water stood half empty. He approached it, lifting the glass with a gloved hand and sniffing it. No odor, he said, but perhaps a trace of something. Doctor, did you drink from this glass last night? Thornton frowned, adjusting his spectacles. Yes, I had a glass of water before bed. Why? Poirot set the glass down, his mind racing. A possibility, nothing more. We shall have this analyzed if possible. For now, tell me about the sedative. What was its composition and what effect would it have? Thornton's voice steadied as he spoke of his craft. It was a barbiturate, a mild dose prescribed for Sir Reginald's insomnia. In small amounts, it induces sleep. In larger doses, it could cause disorientation, even unconsciousness. But it would take a significant amount to incapacitate a man of Sir Reginald's size. Poirot nodded, filing the information away. And this vial, it contained enough for such a dose? Thornton hesitated. Yes, if used improperly, but I kept strict records. Only a few doses were missing from the vial before it disappeared. Poirot dismissed Thornton, turning to Hastings. The sedative, mon ami, it is a critical clue. If Sir Reginald was drugged, it explains the absence of struggle. But who administered it? And how? They moved to the study, where the crime scene remained untouched, a grim reminder of the violence that had shattered the manor. Poirot re-examined the desk, noting the half-empty decanter of whiskey and the glass with the faint smudge of lipstick. He paused, his eyes narrowing. The whiskey, he said, lifting the decanter and sniffing it. There is a faint bitterness. Hastings. Perhaps the sedative was mixed here. Hastings' eyes widened. In the whiskey? That's clever, Poirot. Sir Reginald was known to take a nightcap. Someone could have slipped it in without him noticing. Poirot nodded, his mind racing. But who had access to the decanter, and who knew Sir Reginald's habits well enough to use them against him? They sent for Grayson, the butler, whose stoic demeanor belied the strain of the past days. Grayson, Poirot said, you served Sir Reginald his whiskey each evening, oui? Did you prepare the decanter in the study last night? Grayson nodded, his face impassive. Yes, sir. I filled the decanter from the cellar stock, as always, and placed it in the study around 8 o'clock. Sir Reginald liked to work late with a glass at hand. And who entered the study after you? Poirot asked, his voice soft but probing. Grayson hesitated, his eyes flickering. I saw no one, sir, but the study was unlocked until Sir Reginald retired there after dinner. Any of the guests could have entered. Poirot dismissed him, turning to Hastings. The decanter, it is a point of opportunity. The killer, they knew Sir Reginald's habits and used them to deliver the sedative. We must find the vial, for it will lead us to the thief. They began a search of the manor, focusing on the guests' rooms, with Grayson's reluctant permission. In Eleanor Ashford's suite, a lavish room adorned with silk drapes and gilded mirrors, Poirot's sharp eyes caught a glint beneath a jewelry box on the dressing table. He lifted the box, revealing a small glass vial, its label bearing Thornton's handwriting. Barbiturate, 10 ml. Mon Dieu, Poirot whispered, holding the vial to the light. The missing sedative, it is found. Hastings gaped. In Eleanor's room? Good Lord, Poirot, does this mean she's the killer? Poirot's expression was unreadable. Not yet, mon ami. The vial, it is a clue, but its placement, it is too convenient. We must speak with Madame Ashford. They sent for Eleanor, who entered the library with her usual icy composure, her emerald gown catching the firelight. Poirot held up the vial, his voice calm but firm. Madame, this was found in your room, hidden beneath your jewelry box. It is the sedative missing from Dr. Thornton's bag. Can you explain this? Eleanor's face paled, her hands clenching briefly. That's impossible, she said, her voice sharp. I've never seen that vial before. Someone must have placed it there. Placed it? Poirot echoed, his eyes narrowing. To frame you, perhaps, or to divert suspicion? Tell me, madam, did you know of Sir Reginald's use of sedatives? Eleanor's lips thinned. I knew he had trouble sleeping. Dr. Thornton mentioned it. But I had no access to his medication, nor any reason to take it. Poirot leaned forward, his gaze piercing. And yet, madame, your marriage, it was strained, no? Sir Reginald's sale of Ashford Industries, it threatened your position. Perhaps you sought to stop him. Eleanor's eyes flashed. You accuse me, Monsieur Poirot? I loved my husband, despite our differences. I would never harm him. Poirot nodded, dismissing her, but his mind was racing. The vial in Eleanor's room was a deliberate act, but by whom? He sent for Anna Brooks, whose fierce loyalty to Clara had raised questions. Anna entered the library with a scowl, her arms crossed. Madame Brooks, Poirot said, holding up the vial. This sedative was found in Madame Ashford's room. Did you know of its existence, or of anyone who might have taken it? Anna's eyes narrowed, but her voice was steady. I know nothing about any sedative. If it's in Eleanor's room, maybe she's the one you should be questioning. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. Perhaps, madame, but your presence near the study that night, it is curious. Did you see anyone with this vial, or with access to Sir Reginald's whiskey? Anna's jaw tightened. I saw nothing. I was checking on Clara like I told you. Poirot dismissed her, turning to Hastings. The vial, mon ami, it is a plant, I think. Someone wishes to cast suspicion on Madame Ashford, but why? And who? They continued their inquiries, speaking with Margaret Lyle, whose sharp intellect made her a suspect in the theft. Mademoiselle, Poirot said, you had access to the manor's secrets. Did you know of Dr. Thornton's sedative or of its use? Margaret's eyes were cool, her voice crisp. I knew Sir Reginald took something for sleep, but I had no access to Thornton's bag. If the vial was in Eleanor's room, perhaps she had her own reasons. Poirot nodded, unconvinced. He sent for Victor Crane, whose charm was undimmed despite the mounting tension. Monsieur Crane, Poirot said, the sedative, it was used to incapacitate Sir Ed, lighting a cigar. Chapter 11. The Housekeeper's Tale. The storm that had ensnared Ashford Manor in its relentless grip raged on, its winds howling like a chorus of anguished spirits, tearing through the ancient oaks and battering the stone walls with sheets of rain. The manor, severed from the outside world by flooded roads and an unyielding tempest, was a fortress of secrets, each shadowed corridor and opulent chamber throbbing with the weight of concealed truths. In the library, where Hercule Poirot and Captain Arthur Hastings had retreated to untangle the intricate web of Sir Reginald Ashford's murder, the air was heavy with the scent of aged leather and the faint, lingering trace of ash from the half-burned letter. Poirot sat at a polished oak desk, his notebook open, his pen tracing meticulous lines as he pieced together the mounting clues. Hastings stood by the fire, his hands clasped behind his back, his face a mixture of exasperation and unease. Poirot, Hastings said, turning from the hearth, this case is like a blasted labyrinth with no exit. Clara's confession is falling apart. The secret passage points to an insider. Margaret's note is suspicious. Crane's map is incriminating. The burned letter hints at a scandal. And now that sedative vial in Eleanor's room. It's all a tangle. And Anna Brooks, she's like a guard dog for Clara. What's her role in this mess? Poirot's mustache twitched, a subtle glimmer of amusement in his green eyes. Mon ami, the labyrinth, it has an exit, but we must follow the right thread. Madame Brooks, she is more than a housekeeper. She is a keeper of secrets, a protector of Mademoiselle Clara. Her loyalty, it is fierce, but it hides something deeper. Today, we shall hear her tale, for it will lead us closer to the truth. Hastings frowned, rubbing his chin. Anna, She's loyal, I'll grant you, but she's just a servant. What could she know about the murder? And that sedative, do you think she stole it to protect Clara? Poirot closed his notebook with a soft snap, rising from his chair with the grace of a man whose mind was already several steps ahead. Just a servant, Hastings? No. Madame Brooks, she has served the Ashford family for decades. She knows their joys, their sorrows, their sins. The sedative, it is a clue to the killer's method, and Anna, she may hold the key to its theft. Come, we shall speak with her. They sent for Anna Brooks, who arrived in the library with a scowl, her arms crossed, her sturdy frame filling the doorway. Her gray hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and her eyes, sharp and unyielding, met Poirot's without flinching. She wore a plain black dress, its simplicity a stark contrast to the manor's opulence, yet her presence carried the weight of authority earned through years of service. Madame Brooks, Poirot began, his voice soft but commanding. You have been with the Ashford family for many years, oui? You have raised Mademoiselle Clara, protected her from Sir Reginald's cruelty. Your loyalty, it is admirable, but it is also a veil. Tell me, what do you know of the night Sir Reginald died? Anna's jaw tightened, her voice gruff. I've told you, Monsieur Poirot. I was checking on Clara. She was upset, had been all evening. I heard the scream, came running with the others, that's all. Poirot leaned forward, his gaze piercing but gentle. All, madame? Yet you were seen near the study before the scream. And the sedative vial, found in Madame Ashford's room, it was stolen from Dr. Thornton's bag. Did you take it, perhaps to protect Mademoiselle Clara from her uncle's threats? Anna's eyes flashed, but her voice remained steady. I didn't take no vial, and I didn't kill Sir Reginald. If it's in Eleanor's room, maybe you should be asking her what she was up to. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. Perhaps, madame, but your presence near the study, it is curious. Mademoiselle Clara, she told you of Sir Reginald's threat to send her to an asylum, oui? This was a grave matter. What did you do to protect her? Anna's hands clenched briefly, her face a mask of barely contained anger. I told her to stand up to him, she said, her voice low. Sir Reginald was a tyrant, always lording over her, saying she was weak, unfit. He wanted her out of the way, especially with that sale of his company. I couldn't let him hurt her. Poirot's eyes narrowed, his mind racing. And this sale, madame, you knew of its details? Did Sir Reginald speak of it in your presence? Anna hesitated, her eyes flickering. I heard things, she admitted. Servants always hear things. He was selling Ashford Industries to that Crane fellow, or so he thought. But there was trouble. Arguments. Threats. Sir Reginald said someone was trying to stop him, someone close. Someone close, Poirot echoed, his voice probing. And you, madame, you overheard more, no? Perhaps a conversation between Sir Reginald and Dr. Thornton? A conversation about a scandal, a past mistake? Anna's face paled and she took a step back. What are you getting at, Monsieur Poirot? I don't know about no scandal. Poirot leaned forward, his voice soft but unyielding. Madame, I believe you do. Dr. Thornton, he was once accused of malpractice. A patient died under his care, years ago. Sir Reginald, he helped clear his name, but at a cost. This scandal, it was a secret Thornton feared. And Sir Reginald, he used it to control him. You overheard this, oui? Perhaps in the study. The night of the murder. Anna's breath caught and her hands trembled. You're twisting things, she said, her voice rising. I was near the study, yes, checking on Clara. I heard voices, Sir Reginald and Thornton arguing. Something about a mistake, a cover-up. But I didn't stay to listen. I went to find Clara. Poirot's eyes gleamed, catching the admission. An argument, madame? And what did you do with this knowledge? Did you take the sedative to stop Sir Reginald, to protect Mademoiselle Clara? Anna's face hardened and she shook her head. I took nothing. But if I did, it'd be to keep that man from ruining Clara's life. He was a monster, Monsieur Poirot, and you know it. Poirot nodded, his expression thoughtful. A monster, perhaps, but a monster whose death was planned with care. The sedative, it was used to drug Sir Reginald to ensure no struggle. You say you took nothing but your loyalty. It drives you to great lengths. Did you see anyone near Dr. Thornton's room, or with access to his bag? Anna's eyes narrowed, but she answered, I saw no one. But that Thornton, he's always poking around, leaving his bag where anyone could get at it. If someone took that vial, it wasn't me. Poirot dismissed her, turning to Hastings as the door closed behind her. She knows more than she says, Poirot, Hastings said, his voice urgent. That argument between Thornton and Sir Reginald, it's got to be tied to the murder. And Anna, she's protecting Clara, but could she have stolen the sedative? Poirot's mind was racing, piecing together Anna's tale with the other clues. Madame Brooks, she is a woman of fierce loyalty, but not a killer, I think. Her presence near the study, her knowledge of the scandal, these are threads in the tapestry. But the sedative, it points to another hand. They returned to the study, where the crime scene remained a grim tableau. Sir Reginald's body slumped over the desk, the letter opener protruding from his chest, the whiskey decanter a silent witness to the killer's method. Poirot re-examined, the decanter sniffing it again. The bitterness, he murmured. It is faint but present. The sedative was mixed here, I'm certain. Hastings nodded, his eyes wide. But who had access? Grayson filled it, but anyone could have slipped into the study before Sir Reginald locked the door. Poirot's gaze shifted to the secret passage, its entrance hidden behind the bookshelf. The passage, mon ami. It is the key to the killer's entry. But the sedative, it required opportunity and knowledge. We must learn who knew of Thornton's scandal and who had access to his bag. They sent for Dr. Thornton, who entered the library with a cautious air, his spectacles glinting in the firelight. Monsieur Poirot, he said, his voice strained. I've told you all I know about the sedative. It was stolen from my bag and I had no part in this. Poirot held up the vial, found in Eleanor's room. This vial, doctor, it was hidden in Madame Ashford's jewelry box. Yet you say your bag was secure. Tell me, what was the nature of your argument with Sir Reginald the night he died? Thornton's face paled, his hands trembling. Argument? I don't know what you mean. Poirot's voice was soft but unyielding. Madame Brooks overheard you, doctor. You spoke of a scandal, a malpractice case from years ago. Sir Reginald, he held this over you, oui? Did he threaten to expose you if you did not comply with his wishes? Thornton's shoulders slumped and he sank into a chair. It was years ago, he said, his voice barely audible. A patient died. A mistake. An overdose. Sir Reginald, he had influence, made it go away. But he never let me forget it. He said if I crossed him, he'd ruin me. Poirot leaned forward, his gaze piercing. And this sale of Ashford Industries, it was a point of contention, no? Did he demand your support or something more? Thornton shook his head, his eyes haunted. He wanted my silence. Said the sale would stir up old secrets, but I didn't know what he meant. I argued with him that night, yes, but I didn't kill him. Poirot nodded, dismissing him. The scandal, mon ami, he said to Hastings. It is a motive for many. Thornton, he feared exposure. But who else knew? They continued their inquiries, speaking with Margaret Lyle, whose sharp intellect made her a suspect in the sedative's theft. Mademoiselle, Poirot said, you knew of Sir Reginald's habits, his nightcap. Did you know of Dr. Thornton's scandal, or of the sedative? Margaret's eyes were cool, her voice crisp. I knew Sir Reginald took something. Ever. Chapter 12. The Second Confession. The storm that had cloaked Ashford Manor in its relentless fury showed no signs of waning, its winds shrieking like a banshee through the ancient oaks and hammering the stone walls with torrents of rain. The manor, isolated from the world by flooded roads and an unyielding tempest, was a crucible of secrets, each shadowed corridor an opulent chamber pulsing with the weight of concealed motives. In the library, where Hercule Poirot and Captain Arthur Hastings had retreated to unravel the intricate tapestry of Sir Reginald Ashford's murder, the air was thick with the scent of aged leather and the faint, lingering trace of ash from the half-burned letter. Poirot sat at a heavy oak desk, his notebook open, his pen tracing meticulous lines as he pieced together the mounting clues. Hastings stood by the fire, his hands clasped behind his back, his face a mixture of exasperation and unease. "Poirot," Hastings said, turning from the hearth, "this case is like a blasted puzzle with pieces that keep changing shape. Clara's confession is crumbling. The secret passage points to an insider. Margaret's note is suspicious. Crane's map is incriminating. The burned letter hints at a scandal. The sedative vial in Eleanor's room screams setup, and now Anna's. Tale about Thornton's argument. It's all a tangle. Where do we go from here?" Poirot's mustache twitched, a subtle glimmer of amusement in his green eyes. "Mon ami, the puzzle, it is complex, but the pieces, they are beginning to fit. The sedative, the passage, the letter, they point to a plan, a conspiracy. But the heart of this mystery, it lies in the confessions, Clara's, and now I suspect another. We must press forward, Hastings, for the truth. It is close, yet it hides in the shadows." Hastings frowned, rubbing his chin. "Another confession? Who else would confess? Thornton's nervous, but he's not the type. Crane's too slick, Margaret's too calculated, and Eleanor's too cold. Could it be Henry? He's been drowning in brandy since we got here." Poirot closed his notebook with a soft snap, rising from his chair with the grace of a man whose mind was already several steps ahead. "Lord Henry, he is a man of weakness, but also of guilt. His debts, his scandal, his dependence on Sir Reginald, they weigh heavily. We shall speak with him, mon ami, and see what his heart reveals." They sent for Lord Henry Ashford, who shuffled into the library with the unsteady gait of a man who had sought refuge in a bottle. His tweed suit was rumpled, his face flushed, and his eyes bloodshot. But there was a new weight to his expression, a flicker of something deeper than his usual bravado. He sank into a chair, his hands trembling as he clutched an empty flask, his gaze avoiding the portrait of Sir Reginald that loomed over the room. "Monsieur Poirot," Henry said, his voice rough, "what do you want now? I've told you everything. Reggie and I had our rows, but I didn't kill him." Poirot's smile was polite but piercing. "Lord Henry, you have told us much, but not all. The half-burned letter, it speaks of a scandal, of your name, of a deal that must not proceed. Your debts, they were a burden, and Sir Reginald, he held them over you, oui? Tell me, what did you do the night he died?" Henry's hands shook and he dropped the flask, its clatter echoing in the silent room. "I was in the billiard room with Crane," he muttered. "We've been over this. Heard the scream. Came running." Poirot leaned forward, his voice soft, but unyielding. "And yet, monsieur, I sense a burden in you, a guilt that is not merely from debts. The sedative vial stolen from Dr. Thornton's bag, it was used to drug Sir Reginald to ensure no struggle. Did you know of this sedative? Did you take it?" Henry's face paled and he gripped the arms of the chair, his knuckles whitening. "Sedative? I don't know anything about that. I didn't touch Thornton's bag." Poirot's eyes gleamed, catching the hesitation. "But you knew of Sir Reginald's habits, oui? His nightcap, his whiskey? And you were in the study earlier that evening, were you not? Grayson saw you there, arguing with your brother." Henry's breath hitched and he looked away, his voice barely audible. "We argued, yes, about the sale, about my debts. He said I was a disgrace, that he'd cut me off for good. But I didn't kill him, Poirot." Poirot's voice was gentle, but probing. "And yet, monsieur, I believe you did something. The sedative, it was mixed in the whiskey. Did you drug your brother, perhaps to calm him, to confront him without his temper?" Henry's shoulders slumped and a sob escaped his lips. I did it," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I took the sedative. I found Thornton's bag unlocked in his room earlier that day. I thought if Reggie was calmer I could talk to him, make him see reason. I slipped it into the decanter before dinner. But I swear, I didn't stab him. I left the study after our row and he was alive." The room fell silent save for the storm's roar outside. Hastings gaped, his eyes wide. "Good Lord, Henry, you drugged him. But if you didn't kill him, who did?" Poirot leaned back, his hands clasped, his mind racing. "A second confession, mon ami," he said softly. "Lord Henry, he admits to the sedative, but not the murder. This is a critical piece of the puzzle, but not the whole picture. He turned to Henry, his voice calm but firm. Monsieur, you say you left the study after your argument. Who did you see in the corridor? Who else had access to Sir Reginald? Henry wiped his eyes, his voice trembling. I saw Anna near the study door. She was hovering like she was waiting for someone, and later I saw Margaret heading toward the library. But I didn't think anything of it. Poirot nodded, filing the information away. And the secret passage, monsieur, did you know of it? Henry shook his head, his eyes haunted. Passage? No. Reggie never told me about that. He kept his secrets close. Poirot dismissed him, turning to Hastings. The sedative, mon ami. It was Lord Henry's doing, but the murder, it was another's. The passage, the letter opener, the burned letter, they point to a killer who planned with care. They returned to the study where the crime scene remained a grim tableau. Sir Reginald's body slumped over the desk, the letter opener protruding from his chest, the whiskey decanter a silent witness to the killer's method. Poirot re-examined. The secret passage, its entrance hidden behind the bookshelf. The footprints in the dust, large, likely a man's, did not match Henry's shoes, which Poirot had noted earlier. The passage, Hastings, Poirot said. It was used by the killer to enter and leave, locking the door behind them. But Henry, he did not know of it. Who did? They sent for Anna Brooks, whose fierce loyalty to Clara had raised questions. Anna entered the library with a scowl, her arms crossed. Monsieur Poirot, she said, her voice gruff. What now? I've told you all I know. Poirot held up the sedative vial. Madame Brooks, Lord Henry has confessed to drugging Sir Reginald with this sedative, stolen from Dr. Thornton's bag. You were near the study that night, oui? Did you see Lord Henry or anyone else with this vial? Anna's eyes narrowed, but her voice was steady. I saw Henry stumbling out of the study, reeking of brandy. He looked upset, but I didn't see no vial. I was there to check on Clara, like I said. Poirot's gaze was piercing. And yet, madame, you overheard an argument between Sir Reginald and Dr. Thornton about a scandal. Did you also overhear Lord Henry's row with his brother? Anna hesitated, her hands clenching. I heard raised voices, she admitted. Henry was begging, saying he'd change, but Sir Reginald was harsh, said he'd ruin him. I didn't stay to listen. Poirot nodded, dismissing her. He sent for Margaret Lyle, whose sharp intellect and cryptic note had piqued his suspicion. Mademoiselle, he said, Lord Henry has confessed to drugging Sir Reginald. Did you know of his actions, or of the sedative? Margaret's eyes were cool, her voice crisp. I knew Henry was desperate, but drugging? No, Monsieur Poirot. As for the sedative, I had no access to Thornton's bag. Poirot sent for Victor Crane, whose charm was undimmed. Monsieur Crane, he said, Lord Henry drugged Sir Reginald to confront him. Did you know of this, or of the secret passage? Crane laughed, lighting a cigarette. Henry's a mess, but drugging? That's new to me, Poirot. And passages? I'm a guest, not a historian. Finally, Poirot spoke with Eleanor Ashford, whose icy demeanor had hinted at hidden tensions. Madame, he said, the sedative was used by Lord Henry, yet the vial was found in your room. Did you know of his actions? Eleanor's lips thinned, her voice cold. Henry's foolishness doesn't surprise me, but I knew nothing of. If the vial was planted, Monsieur Poirot. Poirot returned to Clara's room, hoping to probe her reaction to Henry's confession. She sat by the fire, her face pale but resolute. Mademoiselle, he said softly, Lord Henry has admitted to drugging your uncle. Did you know of this, or of his motives? Clara's eyes widened, but she shook her head. I didn't know, she whispered. I just wanted to protect her. The chapter closed with Poirot in his room, his notebook filled with sketches of the vial, the passage, and Henry's confession. The second confession of Lord Henry had brought him closer to the truth, yet the killer's identity remained just out of reach, hidden in the storm-swept shadows of Ashford Manor. Chapter 13. The lipstick smudge. The storm that had held Ashford Manor in its iron grip roared on, its winds shrieking like a tormented soul through the ancient oaks, and battering the stone walls with relentless sheets of rain. The manor, cut off from the world by flooded roads and an unyielding tempest, was a labyrinth of secrets, each shadowed corridor and opulent chamber pulsing with the weight of concealed motives. In the library, where Hercule Poirot and Captain Arthur Hastings had retreated to untangle the intricate web of Sir Reginald Ashford's murder, the air was thick with the scent of aged leather and the faint, lingering trace of ash from the half-burned letter. Poirot sat at a heavy oak desk, his notebook open, his pen tracing meticulous lines as he pieced together the mounting clues. Hastings stood by the fire, his hands clasped behind his back, his face a mixture of frustration and unease. "Poirot," Hastings said, turning from the hearth, "this case is like a blasted jigsaw with half the pieces upside down. Clara's confession is falling apart. Henry's admitted to the sedative. The secret passage points to an insider. Margaret's note is suspicious. Crane's map is incriminating. The burned letter hints at a scandal, and that vial in Eleanor's room screams setup. And now we've got Anna's tale about Thornton's argument. Where does it all lead?" Poirot's mustache twitched, a subtle glimmer of amusement in his green eyes. "Mon ami, the pieces, they are not upside down. They are merely waiting for the right perspective. Each clue, the sedative, the passage, the letter, the confessions, they are threads in a tapestry, and one thread, it shines brighter than the others. The lipstick smudge on the whiskey glass in the study. It is a clue of intimacy, of presence, and it will lead us to the truth." Hastings frowned, rubbing his chin. "The lipstick smudge? I'd almost forgotten about that. You said it wasn't Clara's shade nor Eleanor's. But who else? Margaret? Anna? Surely not the housekeeper." Poirot closed his notebook with a soft snap, rising from his chair with the grace of a man whose mind was already several steps ahead. "The lipstick, Hastings, it is a signature, a mark of someone who was in the study with Sir Reginald before his death. It is not Anna's. She wears no makeup. Her devotion is to duty, not vanity. But Margaret, Eleanor, or perhaps another, this we must discover. Come, we shall return to the study and examine this clue anew." They made their way through the manor's labyrinthine corridors, the storm's roar a constant backdrop to their footsteps. The study, still sealed at Poirot's insistence, was a grim tableau. Sir Reginald's body slumped over the desk, the letter opener protruding from his chest, the blood now dried to a dark crimson. The whiskey decanter and glass stood on the desk, the latter bearing the faint smudge of lipstick that had caught Poirot's eye on the first night. He lifted the glass with a gloved hand, holding it to the light, the smudge a vivid coral against the crystal. "Observe, Hastings," Poirot said, his voice soft but intense. "The shade, it is bold, vibrant, not the subtle rose of Mademoiselle Clara, nor the deep red of Madame Ashford. It is a shade of confidence, of youth, perhaps of ambition. We must compare this to the possessions of the women in this house." Hastings nodded, his eyes wide. "You think the killer left this smudge? Or someone who was with Sir Reginald before the murder?" Poirot's gaze was distant, his mind racing. "Not necessarily the killer, mon ami, but someone close to the crime. The whiskey, it was drugged with the sedative Lord Henry confessed to using. This glass, it was used that night. And the smudge, it tells us who shared a drink with Sir Reginald." They began their investigation with Margaret Lisle, whose sharp intellect and cryptic note had made her a suspect. Poirot sent for her, and she arrived in the library with her usual composure. Her auburn hair pulled back in a severe bun, her tailored gray dress a contrast to the manor's opulence. She carried her leather notebook, her eyes meeting Poirot's, without hesitation. "Mademoiselle Lisle," Poirot said, holding up the whiskey glass, "this glass found in the study bears a smudge of lipstick. It is not Mademoiselle Clara's nor Madame Ashford's. Do you recognize this shade? Do you wear such a color?" Margaret's lips curved slightly, a hint of amusement in her eyes. "You're thorough, Monsieur Poirot. I wear lipstick, yes, but a muted shade. Nothing so bold as coral. You're welcome to check my room if you doubt me." Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. And tell me, mademoiselle, did you enter the study that night? Perhaps to discuss the sale of Ashford Industries with Sir Reginald? Margaret's eyes narrowed, but her voice was crisp. I was in the library working late, as I told you. I had no reason to visit Sir Reginald after dinner. He preferred to work alone in the study. Poirot dismissed her, turning to Hastings. Her denial, it is expected, but her composure, it is too perfect. We shall search her room, mon ami. With Grayson's reluctant permission, they moved to Margaret's guest suite, a tidy room with a single window overlooking the storm-swept grounds. On the dressing table, Poirot found a small cosmetic case containing a tube of lipstick, a soft mauve, far from the coral smudge. He examined the case closely, noting a faint trace of another shade on the inner lining, but no coral lipstick was present. Curious, Poirot murmured, slipping the case back into place. Mademoiselle Lyle, she is careful, but not careful enough. They sent for Eleanor Ashford, whose icy demeanor had hinted at hidden tensions. She entered the library with the grace of a queen, her emerald gown catching the firelight, but her eyes were guarded. Poirot held up the whiskey glass, his voice calm but firm. Madame, he said, this glass bears a lipstick smudge, a shade of coral. It is not yours, you say, but perhaps you know who might wear such a color. Eleanor's lips thinned, her voice cold. I wear a deeper red, Monsieur Poirot, as you've noted. I don't keep track of other women's cosmetics. If it's not mine or Clara's, perhaps you should look elsewhere. Poirot leaned forward, his gaze piercing. And yet, madame, the sedative vial was found in your room. Did you share a drink with Sir Reginald that night? Perhaps to discuss the sale or other matters? Eleanor's face paled, but she recovered quickly. I did no such thing. I was in my room after dinner preparing for bed. The vial was planted, as I've said. Poirot nodded, dismissing her. They searched her suite, finding a collection of cosmetics, including a deep red lipstick that matched her usual shade. No coral was present, but Poirot noted a small vanity mirror with a faint smudge that matched the whiskey glass. Mon Dieu, Poirot whispered, his mind racing. The smudge, it is here, but the lipstick, it is not. Someone has been careless, or deliberate. They sent for Clara Ashford, hoping to probe her reaction to the lipstick clue. Clara entered the library with Anna Brooks at her side, her face pale but resolute, her navy dress simple but elegant. Poirot held up the glass, his voice gentle. Mademoiselle, he said, this glass bears a lipstick smudge, a shade of coral. It is not yours, you say, but perhaps you know who might wear such a color. Clara's eyes widened, but she shook her head. I don't know, she whispered. I wear a soft rose, and I didn't drink with Uncle Reginald that night. Anna stepped forward, her voice sharp. What's this about lipstick? You're grasping at straws, Monsieur Poirot. Clara's told you she did it. Why keep hounding her? Poirot's smile was enigmatic. Madame Brooks, the truth, it is not a straw. It is a beacon. Mademoiselle Clara, you confessed to protect someone, perhaps someone who was in the study, that night. Clara's hands trembled and she looked away, her voice barely audible. I did it, that's all you need to know. Poirot dismissed them, turning to Hastings. The lipstick, mon ami, it is a clue of presence, but it points to a mystery. Not Clara's, not Eleanor's, not Margaret's. Yet it is here. We must find the owner. They searched Anna's room, finding no cosmetics, as expected from her austere demeanor. Poirot returned to the study, re-examining the whiskey glass and decanter. He noted the sedative's faint trace in the liquid, confirming Lord Henry's confession. The sedative, the lipstick, they are linked, he said. Someone drank with Sir Reginald, someone who knew his habits. They sent for Victor Crane, whose charm was undimmed despite the tension. Monsieur Crane, Poirot said, the lipstick smudge. It suggests a woman was in the study. Did you see anyone with Sir Reginald that night, or know of a woman who wears coral lipstick? Crane laughed, lighting a cigarette. Lipstick? You're thorough, Poirot. I was with Henry, as I've said. No idea about coral lipstick. Sounds like a woman's game. Poirot dismissed him, his mind turning to Dr. Thornton. Doctor, he said, The lipstick smudge, it is a clue of presence. Did you see any woman in the study that night or know of Sir Reginald's visitors? Thornton adjusted his spectacles, his voice strained. I saw no one, Monsieur Poirot. Sir Reginald was alone when I spoke with him earlier that evening. Poirot returned to the library, his mind racing. The lipstick smudge was a critical clue, but its owner remained elusive. He sent for Grayson, the butler, whose stoic demeanor belied the strain of the past days. Grayson, Poirot said, you serve Sir Reginald his whiskey each evening. Did you see a woman in the study that night or notice anyone with coral lipstick? Grayson's face remained impassive, but his eyes flickered. I saw no one, sir, but I did notice a glass with a smudge when I cleared the study earlier that day. I thought it odd, but Sir Reginald often had visitors.